Well, how you doing, everybody? Welcome to another episode of House of Auger. My name is JT Auger, man of the house, co-host of the show. With me and my gang of co-hosts, Adam, and actually the rest of them on here. I can't get enough of that game. For those of you who don't know, I'm pretending to be from a game. Red Dead Redemption. Everybody should know that fucking game. Everybody's playing that game by now. I saw I guess I should finish doing the intro. So we are a adult show, family friendly, really. If you're a kid or easily offended, the fuck out. What else is there? Joel and Nicole and Sativa, otherwise known as Metalface, are going to be, well, I think Sativa will be joining us, but again, she's got a client that she's going to be stabbing or punching or doing something to. And Joel and Nicole are eating one of their cows, so they're going to be a little late as well. But this is good because it gives me an opportunity to kind of go over something that I would not be able to with Joel around anyway, because he's a little sensitive about certain topics. And I want to talk to you about this, Adam, and anybody who is listening. I'd like to talk about Trump a little bit. I was talking to somebody, Joel, about Trump earlier today, and they said he lies all the time. Everything he says is a lie. And I kind of disagree with that sentiment. And I want to talk about that a little bit. He posted a link, which I've seen the link before, and I think I've even scoured through some of it before, but I didn't do. I haven't refreshed myself on this list of apparent lies. That's what the list is. It's a list of lies from PolitiFact, I think, of all the Trump lies. Now, here's the thing. The claims that were made was Trump lies about everything, and he lies more than any modern president to date.
No, the claims were one that
that's what he said.
Well, no, that he lies in general.
Yes.
Not about everything, but just in general.
Well, he did say, he goes, dude, he said something to that effect. I know he did.
Lies often, yes. Yeah, but just to
and he
be
said he lies way more than any modern president.
So I read this. This was in our AdMod chat surrounding this podcast. So I caught up to it.
Hold on. Before I give you the talking
you do
stick,
your
I
bit
just want to say
I'll do mine.
This is I'm going to give you my position. I don't think that Trump lies as much anywhere near as other presidents do, or have, I should say. And I don't think the lies are the same. When I think of lies that other presidents have said, I think of, hey, if you want to keep your current medical,
if you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Yeah,
you can keep your doctor. Or they have weapons of mass destruction. These are the lies I think of when I think of presidential lies. And when I think of Trump's lies as president, I should say, I think of I had the biggest inaugural crowd ever. Like that's
inconsequential stuff. Yeah.
Right. And when I hear people argue the position that he's a liar, it tends to be, if it's not inconsequential stuff, it's stuff that later turns out to be true. It's just the way he words it. Like when he said Sweden's fucking all they're doing over there, Sweden's trash now. It's rape country, and it's the worst rape. It's rape central over there, and it's on fire, and it's crazy over there, and it's because of the refugees and people, CNN and everybody came out. This is outrageous how much he's lying. Turned out he was fucking right. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, yes. Adam 2008 says, I think Trump is guilty mostly of hyperbole.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I don't think, like, one of the lies that this particular somebody, Joel.
I'm not going to name names, but it's Joel.
I make sure he's able to listen to this when we put up the recording. So he's like, son of a bitch. Because here's the thing, he didn't want to talk about this. All right, so this, for anybody listening, don't you get mad at me like I'm fucking doing this behind his back. I tried to get him to agree to fucking talk about this, and he's like, I'll sign out. Okay, I don't even want to fucking talk about it. It's a pointless argument, and I have bombs to fucking make because I'm a Packy terrorist. That's what and that's the God's honest truth. All right, I swear on the Bible. Anyway, my point being, I'm an atheist, so I can do that. My point is, I don't think that it's the same at all. Right? What do you think, Adam?
So, okay, so as far as the argument with you and Joel, I think what Joel is trying to get at is because there was this thing about like how you were like, okay, like give me an example. You know, you kept wanting him to like basically back up his case.
Oh, right, and his the lie. Did I go over that?
Yeah, a little bit. But whereas he was very like, dude, like if you don't already know and accept this, then I kind of can't help you. And I think what that was kind of getting at is like when you're talking with somebody, like there's certain things that should be basically common knowledge among everyone, and if you have to like restate everything from the ground up, then it's going to be way too much work, basically. And I think that he was coming at it from like the fact that Trump has said untrue things in the past. Like that should be one of those things where it's like everyone knows that, everyone accepts that as true.
But I don't. Here's my issue
but that. Like, I mean, you even acknowledge that yes, he does say things that are untrue.
Here's the lie that he gave.
They may
as an
be
example.
Inconsequential, but
right here's the lie he gave as an example. He said, here's one example of one of Trump's lies. Trump said that the Democratic Party is for open borders, and that, according to PolitiFact, is substantially, patently untrue. Now, here's the problem with that. This is a prime example of how Trump's lying. I don't necessarily agree. When you look at the caravan situation that's going on, right? To me, it's obvious that you have nonprofit groups that are connected to the DNC who are helping to feed and transport immigrants from down south, Honduras and El Salvador, all the way up to our border. And some of these nonprofits are connected to George Soros. George Soros is obviously connected to members of the DNC, like former President-elect Hillary Clinton, and things like that. George Soros and certainly these people who seem to be helping these immigrants are very clearly for an open borders policy. They don't want us. They're defying the very essence of our border policy.
Well, okay,
our sovereignty as a nation.
Let's be clear.
And the DNC.
Sorry.
All right, hold on.
I'll let you finish. There's, to be clear, like the claim originally made by Trump was not that they are for open borders, but that there is a bill that enforces open borders.
Oh.
And that's what was deemed false. Because like no Democrat has actually bothered pushing that as policy. They've just said it in rhetoric.
Right.
That's the issue.
Okay. Well,
once again, hyperbole
if that's
in that.
The case, did he really do that? He really said that they're pushing a bill?
Yeah. The quote is, every single Democrat in the United States, in the U.S. Senate, has signed up for the open borders, and it's a bill. It's called the Open Borders Bill. That bill does
and
not
there's
exist.
no such bill.
That bill does not exist. Like, it's not a thing.
All right.
But
All right.
there are.
I can't argue that point. Then that's a flat out.
It's like that's just not true. Okay. And so
I don't know why he needs to do that. But at the same time, he'll say shit in the worst way, and people will say, hey, that's patently false, and then dig into it to find out that the Sweden thing, and kind of like what we're talking about here. Yes, there's no open borders policy bill. Fair enough. That's a flat out lie. Not denying that. Not going to argue that point. However, him putting a spotlight on the fact that the DNC to the rhetoric and action take the position of we're open borders. I'm in agreement. I don't think he's doing it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the issue. It's a matter of hyperbole.
Right.
Like,
and
the things he says are reminiscent of the truth or have some kind of truth in their roots. But when it actually gets down to it, it's like
in the ballpark, but he's never hitting a home run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But as for him in general, I think like his, when you say like when you're trying to like analyze, how often he's lying and everything like that, Trump is a guy, keep in mind, that says a lot of things. Okay, that's the thing to realize here. If Trump has a thought, that thought will exit his mouth. And so just as far as volume is concerned, like, when you say that many things, yeah, you're going to be talking out of your butt sometimes. And and Trump is also a guy that, especially like in rallies, he's a guy that plays to the crowd. He wants to get, his goal with a rally is to get the crowd to cheer for him and cheer the things that he has to say. So he's going to say things that are not 100% truthful, but are at least, true enough for the crowd to resonate with. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's the thing is like, okay, I find it hypocritical to be, because I don't think anybody's really upset that he says things that are embellished or untruthful so much as they don't like the raw delivery. They don't like the coating of his pill. It's the same goddamn pill as they get from all the others. The difference is he deliver. It's the delivery system. He's very raw and very kind of crude in his delivery. There's not that presidential air of class or he doesn't come across as and that seems to be everybody's hang up. God damn it, why don't you have your pinky in the air and use big words and lie to us in a presidential way?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like really the same stuff.
Street.
I don't know if it's the same stuff, because like you said earlier, like when,
you know what, I agree with you. It isn't the same stuff.
Presidents,
you're right.
The lies that they would tell. Like, take Obama for instance. Everything that Obama says or said was very calculated.
Yes.
When he says something that turns out to be false, he has, like, that he has at least thought about it, and still concluded that, like, no, I should be saying this, even if it's not true, but it's going to help me politically. Saying if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. A strong case can be made that helped him pass through the Affordable Care Act.
Sure.
But did it turn out to be true? No. But it was still a very calculated thing. And so whenever he lied, it manifested in policy. And that's the difference. When in terms of quantity, so Joel's claim of, Trump lies more than any president in modern history, it depends on what you define as lies. And whether you're talking about just quantity or like the magnitude of those lies and like what kind of damage they cause.
That's the thing, is it's like, okay, so he says there's this open borders policy bill. How much damage did that do? How, as compared to the lie of there's weapons of mass destruction, we went into a fucking war. You know what I mean? Like, that's a massive difference. I don't see the things that Trump says being of any consequence.
Most of the time, that's true.
And I don't know if that's. And here's the thing.
I mean, the lies on tariffs have been pretty damaging to our economy. I mean, basically, like, the way the economy is right now, we've basically wiped out all of the gains of 2018. We're kind of back where we started going into this year. Yeah.
I heard the Dow closed 800 points down. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't know where exactly it is at this very moment, but around October, basically, like, it was a combination of several factors. It was the tariffs for one, and a lot of people think, like, people foresaw Democrats taking back the House, and so the friendly business climate that we had with, like, the Republican majority completely was no longer going to be the case, and so basically this was like, it basically spelled the end of the 2-year-long bull run that the economy had going up to that point.
So you think that we're on a down scale trend, a downslide?
No. What I'm saying is, like, the markets crashed about a month and a half ago, and they crashed pretty hard, and to the point where all of our gains of this year were kind of offset.
That. Did you hear me?
No, you cut out there.
Oh, it dropped that much that the entire gains of 2 years?
Just 1 year, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Took 2 steps forward and took 1 step back. I mean,
basically, yeah.
Is there any indication that turn that tide? I mean, from what I understand, okay, so if this is tied to, and I've heard that it is, this trade war that we're involved in with China, right? Or tariffs war?
Yeah, what about
trade war? So if this, are we not in that, how do I put that? Isn't there a long con that we're doing? I mean, from Trump's perspective, are we not involved in this trade war, and we know that it's going to do damage now, but we're holding out with the understanding that it will be beneficial over the long term?
That's what people are hoping. It's actually, like, really weird that because people still have not been able to figure this out, whether Trump genuinely likes tariffs or if he's using it as a tool in order to get other countries to lower their tariffs. No one really knows. I don't think Trump even knows, to be honest. So, you know, because, I mean, today he tweeted, like, "I am a tariff man," which is a weird way of phrasing that.
What makes it sound like I'm a tariff? What?
I'm a tariff man. Like, as in he's some kind of superhero.
What does that mean?
Huh?
What does that mean?
It means he likes tariffs. I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody can pull up the tweet, but.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. From what I understand, there's an end in sight, isn't there? China just say they were going to send, like, they sent a bunch of delegates to sit down with Trump, with our government, to discuss this whole tariff trade war issue and come to some sort of resolution. Like, they just announced that, didn't they?
Yeah, they've been negotiating with the president of China. Who knows what'll become of that?
But I mean, that's what we've been waiting for, because I think prior to this, we weren't negotiating, and they just announced that we would be. Okay, so then assume this should to our benefit, and then assuming that it does, the drop in the Dow and the issues that we're seeing, like the damage that our farm industry, that our agriculture industry, Joel and Nicole were saying, like it's hurting their bottom line.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully that will stop. So I think we had to endure, and I could be wrong because I'm no economics expert, but I think the underlying issue here is that we had to go ahead and just take it for a little bit. We had to endure some hardship, so that in the long run we could finally gain the upper hand and turn things around, so that we are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what people are hoping is Trump's plan. And like I said, we don't know if he views tariffs as kind of a means to an end of like, yeah, it's going to do some damage in the short term, but if it gets them to lower their tariffs and gives both parties a better trade deal, then it's worth it. That's an actual like reasonable approach. But it's also just as likely that he just genuinely thinks that tariffs are good for the economy, which they are not by any stretch. So who knows on that? And that's what I think is the issue. I think if everyone knew for sure which one it was, then they would be able to kind of commit to the economy more, kind of knowing what's coming.
Well,
because half of the economy is just speculation. Right? Like,
right.
Because even before Trump took office, the economy started going up pretty fast. And that was because they anticipated, like, oh, we got all these Republicans that were just elected. Things are going to be pretty good for us. And even though no actual policy had been passed at the time, it was the speculation of, yeah, suddenly, like, they're not going to, like, slap a bunch of, burdensome regulations on us. So, yeah, or at least they're far less likely to do that than the Democrats would be. So that's so like that kind of took effect.
The one thing that isn't, how do I put this? The one thing that remains true for something like this, a tariff war, a trade war, as if we were at an actual, in an actual war, would be the fact that it's a war of attrition. The winning side is whoever has the amount of resources needed to outlast the other guy. It's not about who kills everybody on the other side. It's about who runs out of resources first, who runs out of oil, who runs out of money, who runs out of steel. And with a trade war, it's whoever runs out of, the ability to last it out. Who can outlast the other one when it comes to, because both of our economies are going to be damaged from this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is that both China and us, while we are engaged in this tariff trade war, we're both taking a hit. And that kind of hit, and that's the thing with the tariffs, is that it's so imbalanced. What we're giving them as opposed to what we're taking from them, we're giving, then they're taking, or then they're giving us, and so as a result, it's going to hurt them more than it hurts us, and so we're going to outlast them. In that regard, we'll win.
That's the hope. I mean, it's still not,
all right.
I mean, that's the hope. But there's also the issue of how long this is projected to last, and how much damage we can actually take. So, I don't know. I'm just gotta hope, I guess. I don't know.
All right, fair enough. I guess we talked about Trump enough. I have another dream that I'd like to share with you all. I am a scumbag in my dreams, apparently. The last dream I had that I shared with you guys, I I tried to steal pictures out of some guy's apartment, like expensive paintings. This time, I was dating some woman, and we end up sleeping together. And then I find out from her, this is really weird. I find out from her dad, who comes to visit, that she's a widow, been only recently, and in fact, her husband's body is in the house. And here's the really weird thing, is I get mad, not that she fucking hid didn't tell me about the body. Like, bitch, you got me fucking in this house when some dead guy's somewhere in here with us. You're dead. What the fuck is going on? No, that's not what upsets me. But the damage to my moral self. Like, damn it. We shouldn't be fucking while your husband still isn't in the ground. He should be buried first before we start fucking. I'm really upset that I've allowed myself to fucking bury.
First time that Auger has had any standards whatsoever.
Right.
Even if it was just a dream.
I don't care that there's a dead body in the house. I don't care that you didn't tell me that you're married and now you're a widow. I don't care anything about that. Just, I shouldn't be fucking you while he's buried. And then we can continue with this. And her dad, Costner. I don't know why that was, but that was interesting. So, my dreams are fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. You know what's funny is I can't remember her at all, but I remember Kevin Costner. He was like, "Hey, you know, her dead husband's in that room over there."
So what? Who was Kevin Costner? Like her dad?
He was eating cereal when he told me. He was eating cereal when he told me. He's like in the doorway. I'm talking to him, and he's like, yeah. He's over there in the
just casual, like, oh yeah. By the way, there's a corpse over there. Might want to, just so you're aware, you know.
Good morning, by the way. There's cereal in the kitchen.
There's cereal in the kitchen and a dead body in that room over there.
Oh, man. So that was fun. But, all right. So I promised everybody that we would talk about beating kids. I don't know if anybody tuned in just because that's what we're going to be talking about or because I promised that's what we were going to be talking about. But I want to talk about it. So I was having an argument, or somebody I wasn't having an argument, but somebody posited that spanking was physical abuse and that you should not do even that much. And I thought about it, and I have to say that my perception has changed over the years. Back when I was raising a kid, and I was for a brief period there, years and years ago, many years ago, I at first held the same belief because, you know, I was raised being tortured, so I figured spanking was nothing. But over time, I changed my position on that. I just didn't feel right when I was doing it. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And I resolved myself to trying to figure out how to discipline a child without getting physically abusive or without having to resort to any sort of physical. And for a long time, I maintained that that was the right way to do things. But as I've grown older, I've taken on a bit of a conservative perspective in that sort of boomer perspective of, hey, you know, my parents beat the shit out of me, and I see all these these, you know, younger generations seem to have no fucking respect. They have no fucking, you know, morals or ethics. They seem to be degenerates and just out of control. Maybe if they got beat when they were kids, maybe it'd be different. So maybe that's what we need. Maybe we just need to beat our kids more. Now I know I say it in a bad way, but ultimately I do kind of. Yeah. I don't mean hauling off and grab the arm and swinging them around and throwing them into walls and shit. But I do mean like physically spanking them. Is that something we're missing, or need to eliminate it altogether? Is that abuse?
So, regarding the whole, like, why is this generation so, entitled and spoiled and everything, I don't think it has to do with a lack of spanking so much as a lack of just discipline in general.
Okay.
So, like, parents these days are very, very lenient, even compared to, like, my parents, and I'm fairly young. It's like kids get away with so much crap these days. It's absurd. Like,
I agree.
And to discipline that does not take being physical with them necessarily. It just takes like actually setting the boundaries, saying, look, if you do this, this is going to be the punishment, and then if they cross that line, then you deliver exactly what you promised. You say, like, if the punishment is like, no video games for 2 weeks, then you enforce that. You hide their, system or whatever, and you enforce that. But a lot of parents these days are just like, oh yeah, okay, well, yeah, it's been like half a day. Here you go. Here's your iPad back. So like, I mean, as far as where spanking is appropriate, I mean, the rule that my parents had with me was they would spank me when under very specific circumstances, which were when I endanger myself or I put other people in danger. So that was kind of the guideline where that kind of thing was appropriate, and so that kind of makes sense to me.
There were specific instances where
it was not just a general punishment. I got a lot of, like, I mean, I was a pretty good kid, so I didn't, get a ton of this, but relatively speaking, it was a lot of like timeouts, a lot of like,
grounded,
loss of privileges, that kind of thing. And since I like those things, then I don't want to lose my Game Boy for a week, so I wouldn't do the thing. I learned my lesson but the thing is, like, my parents were very, like, consistent about the punishments that they would enact. Like, once they said, like, this is the punishment, that was it.
And then you tested it and they followed through.
Yeah.
So you feel
exactly.
That, right. Okay. I agree with that. I think that's ultimately the issue is it's paying attention to the children. And for those who are just tuning in, I see Allison's asking what we're all talking about. We're talking about discipline, child rearing, specifically in regard, and we're talking about the use of physical punishment such as spanking, and whether or not is that abuse? Is it acceptable? And we're kind of exploring that a little bit, I think. And I think you're right, Adam. I think the issue is definitely paying attention to your kids more. I think there's a couple of things that
no one is surprised, Allison.
No one is surprised that Allison wants to beat on kids. But I think there's a couple of issues in regards to child rearing today, raising children, and our society tends to make it so that you have to spend a lot of working. It makes it very difficult to spend a lot of time with your family. Not to say it can't be done, but it's certainly much more difficult to family and support them and have enough time to raise your kids properly. And I think kids need a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people are putting in enough time and effort. And I think on top of that, when so much of your time is spent doing what you need to of water, right? Money in your pocket, bills paid, roof over your head, gas in the car. Uh, what little time you have left, you've got to sleep, maybe relax, try and find some alone me time, or, just whatever. And you got to put in enough effort with your kids. So on top of that, too many people are trying to do it alone. You got too many single parents. And I say single parents, but ultimately I do mean single mothers. There's not a whole lot of single dads out there doing the work. There are.
Yeah.
But the majority of single parents who have the kids and are taking care of the kids tend to be single moms. And that's, I've heard too many times, I don't need the other parent involved, really, to be honest. And I think a mindset that we've kind of cultivated, and I think that that's stupid. And so it becomes easy to put your kids in front of the TV and let that be your nanny. And I think it becomes too easy to hit the kid when you want them to do what you want them to do. Like, your parents had a very specific set of instances. Like, only when you endanger yourself or others are we going to spank you. So it made it especially, it was to drive that point home that much more. That I get. I totally get that. And I think that's probably a good way. It's a good way to do things. But I think too many parents are using spanking or otherwise as a default because it's just easy. Smack a kid upside the throw him through a wall, and then he won't do whatever it is, then he won't fucking forget to wash the dishes again.
Yeah, it's a punishment that, like, scenario. Once you enact it, you don't have to enforce it again. Like, once you're done spanking the kid, you're done. You don't have to, like, make sure that they're, I don't know, like, the punishment is over with at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like,
right. So there's not any follow through, and I think that's a really negative way. That's a bad way.
Yeah.
In your kids.
Well, especially like
it's never over. There's never a point where you can just say, okay, the kid's taking himself, like, until that kid's out of your house, you kind of have to pay attention to what they're doing. You have to,
yeah.
That's your responsibility. And I think too many parents aren't doing that. So I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, what the studies show is that, like, compared to other punishments, spanking at the very least does not give any advantage over other punishments. And in a lot of cases, it develops bad tendencies with them regarding violence later in life, which, maybe there's something to that, but at the very least, like, the fact that it doesn't give you any advantages, like, that should be enough in and of itself to be like, yeah, maybe this is not really, like, worth it.
Right. How does it, if it's not beneficial, if it's
not actually serving you can't even make the greater good argument if it's not contributing to the greater good,
Right. So Adita has joined us, and welcome. I think this is her first time tuning in. I'm so glad you're here.
Not in the audio channel, though.
Oh. So she can't hear us. All right.
Says she's offline.
Type something. Oh, she's not even on now?
Yeah. Joined the server and then immediately left.
All right. Bye, Adita. I'm going to try and tell her.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, she's on now.
All right, so I'm going to tell her. Give me a second here. Join the chat. Or the voice chat, I should say. All right. So give me a second while I try and get her on board. But, yeah, I mean, and that's a hard thing for me to say that I think there is a case to be made punishment. Because I was abused. Like I didn't.
Yeah.
I like to say I didn't have much as I had torturers, and so I certainly don't condone. God here, how? Okay, I'm gonna help her out here. Let me see here. How do I do this where I get to see the things in the top left corner? Well, this is exciting show stuff right here. Give me a second here, folks. But I don't think that I don't think you should do it overboard. I think I really what Adam's parents did, where they set it aside for a very specific set of circumstances. Use screenshots to explain. I want to, but I fucking all right. You see him? Okay. Those. Then see the voice channel. Tap the which one is it? It's the
HOA radio chat.
Tap the HOA radio chat. Then hit the button at the bottom. What's the button at the bottom say anyways? It says like join or something. Ta-da!
Hey, she's in. Woo!
All right. Welcome, Adina.
By the way, right. Every non-host is automatically server muted.
Yes, so you'll be able to hear us, but we can't hear you. But for anybody who wants to join the conversation, if you have anything to say, all you have to do is let us know in chat. You can type it in the chat, the HOA show chat, and then we'll go ahead and unmute you, and you can join us in the conversation.
Yep.
Excuse me. Right now we're talking about beating kids and stuff like that. Allison will be on in 1 hour. Why will she be on in 1 hour? What happens in an hour? She's here now.
I mean, 420 was like 4.5 hours ago.
That's true. There's going to be a whole month of 420 in the year 2020.
That there is.
That's going to be lit as
all
fuck
the jokes.
Month. Yep. It's just going to be a constant high for like a whole month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, is there anybody who disagrees with the concept of...
Yeah, make a case.
Is there anybody who thinks that physical punishment should be more of an issue or should be used more often? And if so, why? Or maybe you think that there's no case for spanking or you should never touch your kids in a physical punishment way whatsoever. At all, ever. It's all abuse, no matter what you do. I'm like Adam. It was used once on me for a special thing.
Yeah.
I once knew a girl who physical punishment was used on her once as a special thing. It was in the middle of the night, and it changed her for. Kids need the shit. No. Oh, that's very old world. Like that is the old way of doing things, though. Like that was, seen and not heard. And if you stepped out of line on anything, it didn't matter what it was, you got a fucking knot in your head. You got your dick knocked in the
Yeah.
dirt. And I kind of, and I feel like there is definitely either way. I'm against physical punishment because of how it was used, but I also feel like there's such a thing as an extreme on the other side of the spectrum where, you pamper a child and spoil them too much and don't use any sort of punishment. And that's a bad idea too. I don't know. I feel like we've kind of come to an agreement, at least you and I have.
Yeah, I think there's a certain point where you do it too often and it becomes abusive. If that's like your go-to, then it can definitely be viewed as that. Especially like, like with spanking specifically, like you're limiting it to just their butt, and when you start like hitting them in the face, like that, obviously that changes things.
Breaking fingers.
The frequency of it obviously changes things as well. So like, I will say it is hard to say like when exactly it goes from a normal form of punishment to actual abuse. Like, I don't think there's a clear point where you can draw that line.
I think a safe way to determine that is if you're in an elevator with your child headed to the doctor's office and you're telling your kid before you get to the doctor, make sure you tell him that you broke that bone at school fighting with another kid. That might be an indicator that you
usually a sign you've crossed the line. Yeah, if you have to like, make the kid lie for you.
You may want to consider that you have gone too far. Just saying. What if their ass isn't available? When is your kid's ass not available?
Yeah, you just pull them aside and
how is your kid's ass not available? Like, what does that mean? When they're sitting,
they're tiny. You just pick them up and move them, and you drive.
And you're driving.
Then
why
you pull
are you
over.
trying to punish your kid?
Yeah. Also,
drive.
Like,
My mom did that shit. She would drive with one hand, and she would take the back of her fucking fist and hit me in the face with the other one. And all I could think of as a 5-year-old was, please focus on the road. I don't want to die. like, can you please don't crash the car and kill us. I was more scared of that than her fucking knocking my fucking eyeball out of my head. Like that. Nigga, don't act like kids don't act a fool in the car. Well, of course they do. But drive. Pull over if you need to fucking hit them that bad. You shouldn't be having kids.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
I think you should just not have kids, is what I think. Both my parents were Amanda Lynn says, both my parents were emotionally and physically abusive. I normal, but when I reached my older teens, I realized that it's not okay. I used to be okay with spankings, but my dad got a year and a half ago, and it's made me reevaluate corporal punishment. Whoa. What did your dad stood for? That's crazy. Did Adita leave the show? No, she's still here.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, she's still here. You are very focused on her.
Well, because she's new. I wanted to make sure that she knew how to get in, and then plus she's a friend of a friend, and I like her. She's fun. Cool. Downloading and distributing child pornography.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. I don't
yeah.
God
that is
damn. I don't think
that's pretty bad.
I want to clarify. When I say physical punishment, I do not mean of a sexual nature in any way, shape, or form.
Definitely if it's sexual, that definitely has crossed the line.
You should never finger fuck your kids as a punishment. That should never enter.
Or your siblings looking at you, Lena Dunham.
He's deported in a couple of weeks. Your dad is being deported? What the fuck? Your parents aren't white? I thought your parents were. Where is your dad being deported? Where's your dad from? Dad's from Scotland.
Yeah.
Damn.
But wait, I thought that any immigration issue was to do with race, and as a white person, he's basically just given automatic citizenship in this country. That's how that works, right? Right? We only enforce borders going in the direction of the brown people.
Holy shit. You not have... God damn. Amanda, do you want to join the conversation?
Yeah, if you have a microphone, then, let me unmute you.
I know Allison wants to join.
She always wants to join.
Are you high right now, though?
That's her secret.
You have to tell
She's always high.
You have to tell us... No. Not you, Adita. Not you, Adita. Allison. Allison wants to join, and I want to let her join, but you can get rowdy.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you're high, because if you're high, like you can, it's a bit like pulling teeth sometimes.
I mean, she just turns into a raging SJW when she's high, as we learned last
Amanda
week.
She can't use the mic. Her husband's. No, I'm driving. Well, then focus on driving, crazy.
Yeah.
Don't be killing yourself.
Get off the chat.
God, what are you typing and driving at the same time? You're crazy. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm not going to reward such behavior with an unmuting of a microphone.
My car's a tool.
What does that have to do with anything? The year of your car has nothing to do with this.
Did you hear about the guy who got caught while he was driving?
He got caught what?
Okay, so some cops, I don't know, I think this was a local issue. Some cops, there was some guy going like 75 in the fast lane or something. And some cops drove, they pulled up, so they kept speed with him, and they looked in, and the guy's driving a Tesla. So they look over to say, hey, slow down. And the guy's asleep. And they're like, so they're turning on their sirens and flashing lights. Nothing's working. They can't, he's unresponsive. So one of the cops gets in front of the Tesla and slows down little by little. I guess if you do that, a Tesla will slow down.
It'll react.
And eventually it'll stop. So they got it to the point where it stopped. And they got into the car, and they're trying to get, wake the guy, and he's unresponsive. Now, apparently, Tesla has, I guess, what they call an autopilot, but it's really just
it's a self-driving car,
But it's a fancy cruise control. You still need to put your hands on the wheel.
I don't think so.
Well, that's what they were saying in what I was in the news thing that I was listening to when they were talking about this. They said that the way that this guy got around it was he had put his hands on the bottom end, the bottom of the wheel.
Oh, you're saying in order for this software to activate. Okay, I thought you meant like you need to do it in order for the function to like properly work. Kind of like how you have to steer when cruise control is on. But
no, I think
it's more of like a safety precaution that's built in. Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah. He figured out a way around it and just put his hands on the bottom of the wheel and then passed the fuck out. So he was driving. He was drunk as a skunk. So he thought, I'll just turn the car on, fucking point it in the direction I need to go.
The car is a better driver than him at that point.
It was. Like, this totally prevented, in a way, I mean, it's still bad what he did, but in another sense, like, hey, this turned out way better than it could have had it been any other fucking car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about self-driving cars is they're getting so much flack right now, and they have been really since the technology first came out, which was probably like 10 years ago when it was like, finally starting to like be in a somewhat working condition, and because there's a ridiculous double standard, because we like car accidents are, I want to say, top 3 in causes of death in the U.S. I don't remember exactly where they fall, but it's definitely up there. Lots of people die from car accidents. But as soon as anyone dies in an accident involving a self-driving car, all hell breaks loose. And
right.
It's just like these cars are expected to be completely perfect. And Elon Musk even made that point on Twitter, and people were like raking him over the coals for it. But it's like, dude's kind of got a point. Like, you know, you can call out a double standard while still saying, like, yeah, our technology needs to be better. But the interesting thing, though, is especially in the early stages of self-driving cars, is they would be getting into these accidents, but it was not because of bad software. It was because the humans around them were bad drivers. Like,
right.
And it couldn't account for the unpredictability that comes with being a human.
Right.
And at this point, from what I understand, the technology is a lot better. They're a lot more adaptable to things around you.
Oh, yeah.
But
Scott said something here that I think is an interesting. There's a movie.
I don't know how possible that is, at least with Teslas, but
I mean,
theoretically,
if it's got a computer on board. I was watching, Upgrade. Thank you, Adita. That's exactly the movie I was thinking of. Scenario takes place where they hack the car and they drive the car into an accident. They cause the car to have an accident remotely. And then of course somebody dies, although it wasn't because of the accident. But anyway, enough with the spoilers. I think I saw recently, maybe a few months back, I saw something where somebody was driving a car and another person hacked that car's onboard computer and caused the car to shut down.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, and if that's possible, I mean, that's kind of scary. If they can shut your car down, can they cause it to go faster? Can they cut the brakes?
I mean, theoretically, if you can actually get into that and make the car do something, there's really not a lot of limit as to what you can make the car do.
I mean,
but that's the issue, is how hard is it to actually gain control of those functions remotely? And I mean, I guess if this has actually happened, then, security on these things was obviously not a huge concern, but it definitely should be going forward, because that is very dangerous if that's actually possible.
It should make you concerned about anything that has a computer in it, like, because that seems to be the goal, right? Is to make everything digital. We want everything to have a computer in it now. We want computers in our fucking fridges and our toasters. We want everything to be connected. And the scary thing about that is that means anything with it hacked. And then whatever can accessed via that computer, whoever's hacked into it should be able to access controls. So what if your pipes and your gas system, your natural gas in your house, your heater and everything had an onboard computer? What if you could access it and cause it to overload or something? I mean, I'm probably sound like an illiterate fuck right now, because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, because I don't know heater systems, and I don't know if that's something you can do remotely, and I'm sure it's probably not. But you get where I'm driving at. You can cause accidents.
Yeah.
And then you can blame it on the computer. Oh, there was a glitch in the operating system, or a glitch in the onboard computer for that hardware just updated, and the update must have carried a glitch with it.
Yeah.
That's what caused the accident. Oh well, so too bad, so sad, so sorry. Let's all mourn their deaths. Like, that's scary shit to me. Like, I don't. This is why I feel like everything should not be. I'll never own one of those fucking Alexas or one of the.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Not that it matters, because I don't fucking need to, because this goddamn thing that you have in with you all day, every day, is basically Alexa anyway. Your phone has a camera, has a microphone, and they can access that at any time.
Yeah. Yeah, if they want to ruin you, they can. But of course, like we're still at a point where it's like if somebody actually came out and said like, "Oh, yeah, this person we have this voice recording that we got via hacking their cell phone," like that would still raise a lot of red flags on the part of the accuser. So like but yeah, no, it's scary because like this has happened to me where like my wife and I will be talking. I think what it was my wife told me like, "Oh yeah, I really want to get like matching Christmas pajamas," and then like the next morning on her like Facebook ads there was an ad for Christmas pajamas, and it's just that's what it's used for right now, and it's scary. I don't like it.
Right.
I'm like,
so there's a YouTube video. My sister showed me this. I'm sure it should be easy enough to find. Some guy is talking about that very same thing where he's like, the argument has been made that the microphone and the microphone on your laptop or your computer or your phone or whatever is always listening all the time, and that it's used for that very purpose to provide you with ads
to market
based on the things that you're saying at the time. And he turns everything off. Well, first he goes and he hits a few different websites online that have ads on them. And he looks at those ads and he shows you what the ads are when he first opens them up. And he writes down on a piece of paper something that he's going to talk about. He says, when it comes to time, he doesn't own a dog, but he writes on a piece of paper dog toys, and he says this is going to be the topic that we're going to talk about. I'm not going to mention anything about it until it's time to do that. And he explains he doesn't even own a dog, so he shows these websites and then he shuts them all down, but he leaves the laptop on. And for like 2 minutes, he just goes into this, I would really like, I could really use a dog toy. And I think he gets a little specific. He does it for like 2 minutes where he just talks about dog toys. I like a squeaker toy, maybe bone shaped. And, he gets into different things. He goes, yes, like a good dog toy, good sized dog toy for a medium dog, like he goes into these different specifics. And then finally, after 2 minutes, he gets back online, goes to those same sites, and sure as shit, there's ads for fucking dog toys.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, that's creepy. That's fucking
so
creepy.
And like, when that happens to you, this is the ultimate irony of it, is they're trying to just make more money off of you, which honestly, like, of all the uses for that technology, that's probably like the least egregious.
The least damaging.
But
areas.
The funniest part of it is when that happens to you, the last thing you want to do is click on those ads.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I never want matching Christmas pajamas ever. At this point, now that like I know that my phone listened to me and then deliberately gave me an ad for Christmas pajamas, like, not happening. No way. Like,
you have turned me off
exactly.
Of matching Christmas pajamas for life.
I'm like, screw that. No.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's just but I mean, there's no form of technology that has not been weaponized if it can be weaponized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the first thing, any new technology that comes out, that's the first thing that gets hit. Like they want to know, can this somehow be weaponized? And so if they're using it to listen in, to figure out how to specialize ads for, specifically for us, what else are they using it for? Yeah. There's a friend of mine, a guy who I use his studio. He owns a recording studio, and he has an alarm system. His cameras camera set up. He has it set up so that they're motion censored. So when he's not there, if anybody comes near the front door or if there's any movement on the inside, the cameras turn on. And he gets notified on his phone and he can access the feed, the live feed from his phone. On top of that, motion detection, sorry. Excuse the fuck out of me, Miss Fancy Pants. Really? What's the difference between motion detection and motion sensor? Really? You're going to get into that?
Yeah, it's a little pedantic.
Go fuck yourself. Anyway, what's really interesting is when those motion detection, motion sensor, whatever, when those go off, and you know, if it goes for, I think, a specific amount of time for like, you know, because it's not gonna. Sometimes there's a cat that goes in front, or maybe there's some sort of animal or something, whatever. But if it goes for like a minute and they're for that long, it will turn on the mic on his phone. Can listen in to what's said inside of his studio from the mic in the phone, the length in the studio.
Oh, so like the desk phone?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when he was telling me that, and this was years ago, and he goes, if they can access that, how can they access that? Like he goes, I thought that was a one-way thing, but it's not a one-way thing. And you don't need the phone receiver to be picked up for that to turn on. You can turn that on and listen in on the other end. He goes, there's no way they're the only ones who have access to that.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
That means that landline phones, how long has that been? How long have they been able to turn how long has that technology existed where they've been able to do that? As long as they have been
digital, as opposed to analog. Because with analog, it's actually like a circuit that can do a very limited amount of things. Whereas with digital, it's basically just a computer. And you can feed it whatever commands you want. Including, hey, turn on the microphone and send that information, to the right place. So,
right.
However long that's been a thing.
But I mean, that's a little unnerving. It's a little too invasive.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
And I feel
which is why, sci-fi movies will never be irrelevant. Even if they get the actual, specifics wrong, the general idea of, technology gone, too far, that to the point where it's now, causing harm to everyone, and it's crazy weaponized and dystopian and everything. That's always going to be a trope. Because, that's a very real possibility. And honestly, I would say an inevitability. The pessimist in me would.
There's just no privacy anymore. And no. I have a real problem with that.
Yeah.
Why would you, I don't know, man. Why would you want one of those Alexa things? Do you own one of those?
We do, but the thing is, my wife and I got it for Christmas the other year, and my wife didn't really have a problem with it because she's like, if my phone is listening to me, who cares if Alexa does too? And I'm like, I don't want one more ear in the house. The phone is already over the line, but let's not cross it anymore.
Yeah.
And so we agreed to compromise that whenever I am in the house, Alexa is unplugged. So
nice.
She will use it, but yeah, it hasn't and I'll check
Yeah. I guess you can go online and bring up a list of everything you've ever asked Alexa. All the questions you've ever asked Alexa are available online. You can bring up a list. Did you know that?
Say that again?
So you can go online to your account or whatever. I don't know. Who puts out Alexas? It's
Amazon.
Amazon. So you can go on Amazon account and you can access a list of all the questions you have ever asked Alexa.
Yeah.
So if that means there's a record of everything you've asked her, there's no way they're not recording everything that when the mic is on. So then there's a record of everything that you've probably ever said when that thing's fucking plugged in.
Well, that there's a small distinction to be made. The data that it stores could easily just be the like text version of what you said rather than an actual like recording of like the audio file. You know what I'm saying?
You think there's no like there's no they're not saving the audio recordings?
If they did, it would take a very, very large database to store all that.
You know who has such a large database?
The
that
NSA, yeah. That they do.
And I'm positive that they would be more than happy to provide them with some server real estate that they could store their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if Amazon agreed to comply with that, then yeah.
I don't know, man. It's a crazy world.
Yeah.
Like that's so. There's just no privacy, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know that we can.
I will say, like, I mean, historically speaking, I want to say Fourth Amendment, the unreasonable search and seizure, people have cited that as like the implied right to privacy. I really wish that the founding fathers had actually explicitly written down, like, yes, you have a right to privacy. You know, because it would have. There's been so many cases where right to privacy does apply, and then there's so many more where it's just ignored. And it's just like, if it was like explicitly unconstitutional, I don't know. Like, that's. I feel like that would have helped.
Would have done the trick?
I mean, it wouldn't have necessarily been 100%, but it definitely would have helped. At least from a legal perspective. But, I mean, they always find any way around that they can. But I will say, like, the good thing about the dynamic so far is that the tech companies and the government don't seem to be getting along when it comes to people's data. Like, there was a case involving Apple about a year or two ago where the government... Huh?
Go ahead.
Basically, like, the government was trying to track somebody down, track down a criminal, and this person in question used, I want to say an iPhone or maybe some other Apple device, but basically, like, Apple had their personal information, but refused to give it to the government because they were like, and basically, like, the government wanted a backdoor into their encryption systems. In order to, and it was under the guise of, we're going to use this to stop the bad guys. But I think Apple,
you might have your facts wrong. Are you talking about the guy and the girl, the two terrorists here in California, over in God damn it, where was that? Not Rivers. Well, it was inland.
Maybe. I don't remember the details, but
they had the phone. Hang on a second.
Yeah, let me look this up but from what I remember, it was basically like that the government wanted not only this, you know, alleged criminals' information, but they also wanted a backdoor into Apple's encryption in order to get basically anyone's data that they wanted.
The San Bernardino attack in 2015.
Maybe it was.
Yeah, it was that guy and the girl, whatever their fucking names were. I don't know. Muhammad and or no, and Malik.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Um, they had their phone and they wanted to get into their data. They wanted to be able to access the phone.
Oh, yeah. The phone was locked. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was locked. And they were like, we want the back door. We know you guys have a back door. And Apple was like, actually, we don't. But we could make one, but we don't want to make one specifically so that you can get into this, because
exactly.
then if we make one, it can, and then it can be used to hack other people's phones. It can,
yeah.
If it gets into the wrong hands, that was the argument made. Here's the problem with that, and here's where I get to be a crackpot theorist or a paranoid conspiracy theorist type. I worry that was all show for the rest of us to make us feel safer about Apple products. Like, oh, look at Apple fighting the good fight. They don't have, there was so much public clamor around that issue at the time. And everybody was like, woohoo, yeah, Apple sticking it to the man. Fuck you, the man. We're not giving you what you want. Like, dude, there's no way those guys don't already have a fucking back.
Yeah.
I don't believe that for a second.
It's possible. Yeah, it's entirely possible.
I think, and I'm talking about Apple. And so, number one, I think this is for show to make us feel safe about our fucking, about their products. And then two, I feel like this is so that we all think that they're not in cahoots together. I don't think, I don't know. That's my opinion. That's when I see shit
plausible.
like that, that's how
theoretically possible. So other Adam is now unmuted. He wanted to chime in.
Yeah.
Go for it, Adam.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, buddy?
All right. So a couple of things what you're saying. The Fourth Amendment issue, because you wanted on that. Fourth Amendment, like I said, my jam is this. This is what I do, criminal defense for a living. The Fourth Amendment it's very explicit. You do have the right to privacy in your persons, places, papers, etc., and that's uniformly been expanded into the digital age. It's still kind of growing a little bit. I mean, they're saying that this Supreme Court is going to be the digital court, but the big question is whether or not a person has what they call a reasonable privacy, and that's where that's where our current battlefield is right now. So
what did you say? A reasonable what?
Expectation of privacy. That is that is the number one thing that's being litigated probably for the last 10 years now. Right. So what it comes down to is basically what's reasonable to expect to be secure when you're transmitting. Text to text, person to person have uniformly in the past, everyone said, oh yeah, that's all private. Now the problem you have is with like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, all those, they're saying, well, there's group involvement, people able to see it. The service provider can see it, and that's where you run into an issue. There's a second part of the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment does not apply to private companies. So if Apple comes up and says, hey, you know what, we did some spying on our customers, and it turns out that, John Smith over here is looking at kitty porn, then the government says, well, who is it? And great, they can bust you, and you have no recourse. It only protects you from the actions of the. So this is where we have an issue, and this is what kind of ties into what you're talking about, the San Bernardino terrorist people. Apple denies up and down that they had anything to do with cracking the iPhone. I don't. Honestly, I think they're full of shit. I think they worked with the government and kind of built a back door and helped them get access to it. But the problem is, they kind of disavowed it, and they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They're trying to secure. Yeah, go on.
Well, I just had a quick question. The last I had heard about that particular case was that the FBI wanted Apple to do that, and Apple said no, and that's where it was at. Was there an update to that situation? Did they has there been a backdoor made?
Yeah, they got into the iPhone, the guy. I think his name was Farouk something. I don't remember. It's been a long time. So yes, right. They got in there, and there was this big uproar because this was right around the election time, and that crazy fuck John McAfee was running for president, who was entertaining loved him to death, but whatever. So
right,
they got in there, and what they found was literally a recipe. I'm not making this up. A recipe for hummus and shish kebab on his note, and a reminder to from like 3 weeks ago to go bike cleaning. They found nothing on his phone. So yeah, they did get in there, and then they asked Apple, and Apple very publicly said, "We have no idea how they got past our encryption," and then that's where they left it. So whatever they did, they're not saying. See,
that's too suspicious to me. That's shady. Believe it.
No, and if you remember also, and this was the one that kind of got swept under the rug. It wasn't. Well, maybe WikiLeaks. I forget who it was. Right before the election, they dropped a whole bunch of documents. It was actually more centered on the CIA than the NSA, and they basically said the CIA has the ability to log into pretty much any smart TV in the country.
Yes,
and listen into your conversations. You haven't heard anything about that since then. Yeah,
I remember people like just a year prior to that mocking that people who were saying that the CIA could do that, and they were laughing at them. Like my mom used to I taught my mom to put tape over the little camera on her laptop.
Yeah.
I remember my sister would laugh at her and I for doing that. And they can turn that shit on. And then those WikiLeaks that dump proved they could do that with laptops and TVs. They all had back doors.
Yeah. No. I did the same thing. I actually physically disconnected my mic and then put a piece of tape over my camera. So I mean, and it's like, it's crazy. So yeah, no. The answer is they have the means and they have the ability. In my opinion, I think the difference is I think they've been collecting data for years. I think that they're spying on you. I've got news for you, and that's not like it's common. I think it happens, but with data analytics and they're able to computerize and technology recognizing content, is they're finally figuring out what the hell to do with all this stuff. I mean, a data dump of 500 million phone calls doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because how are you going to sort through it? Now they don't have to. They have computers which can go into keywords and everything else. And
right,
it's a scary era. Like I said, we're in the digital age of law, but we still have a lot of growing. And again, it's all coming down to what can we reasonably believe is private? And everyone does it, but we've signed away so many privacy rights to Facebook. Have you ever read the terms of use? I haven't. I mean,
no.
It's like 300 pages long. And think about how many of those contracts there is. You scroll
to the bottom and you click I agree.
Exactly. I have one with Apple for my iPhone. I have one for PlayStation Network. I mean, at this point, I'm going to say there's probably 30 different contracts I'm entered into, whether I even remember doing it or not. God only knows what. No, it's the truth. God only knows what the hell is buried in there. And then the big problem is the courts have said, if it's the companies that are turning you in and turning you over, the government can do whatever they want with that information. You're not protected. So it's gonna. What's going to be scary is when they start cooperating and voluntarily turning this stuff over for probably tax breaks and all the other crap.
Is there any movement that's active in trying to put in place laws or legislation that will create a barrier there where right now there isn't one? You're talking about how if these companies go to the government and hand over the information they have on us, we don't have a right to them. We don't have any sort of expectation of privacy. Is there any movement to change that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, again, you have these cases that are played out in the courts. I'll give you an example too. There was a case, like I said, it's God, for life of me, it was out of Oregon, either Oregon or Washington. This was from about 3 years ago, and I remember this one because they actually busted it. This was the largest child pornography case ever prosecuted in U.S. history. It was God, I don't remember the specifics. It had some creepy name, like the Children's Play Den or something really, really fucked up. Yeah. So, long story short, the attorneys for this guy had it, and he was going over Tor, which is the onion router. There's some legit uses for it.
Right, that's the deep web or dark web, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking about. Sort of. There's a lot of legit uses for it, but there's also a lot of really shady shit on the dark web. There's a reason I haven't ventured in there. So long story short, this guy basically told his attorneys, there's no fucking way they got past my encryption. Like, I was double, triple. So they filed a simple motion in a federal court and said, hey, just show us what happened, turned over the logs of computers. The FBI, and for summarizing in about 2 years, said, no, we're not going to. Finally, the federal court did a final show cause, which is, okay, do it or else we're going to have to dismiss the case. Said, fine, go ahead and dismiss the case. He dismissed the largest child pornography case in U.S. history.
What the fuck?
Dozens of defendants, rather than tell what they were doing to figure out how they. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
What are they doing? They're doing something illegal then.
Of course they are. But and I mean, this isn't Jones. I have a 10 on my hat. I mean, you can read the federal brief. It was God, it's not. That's not the ninth.
If you can remember that specific case, can you provide a link to that?
Yeah, let me look on Pacer and see if I can find it.
In the chat?
In a government watch list for looking up.
Son of a bitch, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
That is insane. So there's a ton, like dozens of pornographers got away with it scot-free because the FBI couldn't divulge how they found out.
If I'm not mistaken, they said their final last ditch was because there's certain stuff you don't have, right? There's a federal discovery. I'm not going to go into rules of evidence and everything. Honestly, it sucks. It's boring. Everything. Things you can say.
I find it fascinating.
Yeah, you can say things are privileged, but one thing that you can try to protect. I think they went was, hey, we can't turn this over because it's secrets. Trade secret. So for instance, you can't say like, give me the diagram to a nuclear warhead because, whatever. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but they're not going to give you that shit, obviously, because it could be dangerous.
Right.
So, I mean, they threw everything they could at this fucking case. And finally, the federal judge, I mean, if I remember right, he sat there and he goes, I'm back for words. He goes, U.S. attorney do something. And the U.S. attorney said, Judge, I've talked. They're not doing it. I have to dismiss. And they dismissed the fucking thing.
I don't see this. I gotta fucking read this.
Let me find Let me find out. I mean, God only knows where it is. Some of the bar journal somewhere.
And this causes me to puts me in a position where I feel like the lack of privacy on one hand is a good thing, because yes, these people can't hide, right? Like we can find these dirty, shifty, shady fucks who are sex trafficking or child pornographers or whatever the case may be. That kind of just nefarious, sinister. To have that kind of access, to be able to find those people, means the rest of us are completely left open and bare. Yeah. And is aid? And I mean, it hurts my heart to hear that dozens of fucking child pornographers were set scot-free because the fucking FBI can't say, yeah, we did this illegally, like we found them fucking dirty. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the rest of us need our privacy.
Well, I'll tell you, I think I'm about as pretty close to a constructionist as you could find. I understand the Constitution, but I remember Ben Franklin always said it: those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Yes, right? There's a variation. And that's kind of been my guiding principle. Here's the deal. I can just work on the criminal defense side. I don't trust the damn government. I mean, I don't. I don't trust the prosecutor's office. I don't trust them to do the right thing. You know, there's this kind of feeling that people get that, you know, these prosecutors are these holy people, you know, fighting for the kids and everything else. It's all fucking bullshit. I mean, it's some of the most inept, incompetent, and amoral assholes I've ever. And no, and you know, I certainly got some great people up there, but I mean, I have some, you know, that just literally took a case to trial because he told me in my face, "I hope your client goes broke paying all these fucking legal fees." And I mean, oh yeah, yeah. I could. Well, we're in the middle of a complaint against her. It was a murder case, so we got last summer. But trust me, I've only been licensed for 6 years. I've been doing criminal defense nonsense. I've seen enough where I've just said, "Fuck it all." I'm trying to find the case. As soon as I find it, I will email it or post it on this group thing. But no, it's
prosecutors. From what I understand, their reputation is based solely on their winning streak, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably about 85% of it. Is their conviction rate? Yeah,
they're right. Thank you. Their conviction rate. So that being the case, incentivized then not care so much about whether the person that they're trying to convict is guilty or not. Once they've gotten to that stage, it's like it's just about winning.
Yeah, exactly. And where you see it the most are in the young prosecutors when they're trying to make, you know, a name for themselves. One of my favorite prosecutors is a guy that actually is retired and come back to the DA's office 3 times now. He's 67 years old, and he just doesn't give a shit. I mean, if it's a bad case, he'll literally dismiss it on a felony on the first setting because he's like, you know, yeah, no, I mean, you know, this is somebody that's tried and gotten, you know, death penalties. He doesn't care anymore. He's not going for, you know, guts and glory. But where you have the problem is, you know, the ones that are young, dumb, you know, 2 years out of law school, you know, trying to make a name for themselves, and, you know, damn it, you know, I'm going to do it my way. Holy shit, they're a nightmare to deal with.
I'll bet.
Yeah, and you have,
and so because I think it's great that you're saying that, only because the general consensus, it seems like the public perspective is that, like you said, the prosecutors are the fighters, they're the holy warriors, and the defense are scumbags defending scumbags.
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. No. That's just it. I mean, I can tell you, it's you know, I came from a family of police officers, and they're like, really, you had to fucking okay. Here we go. I just found the article on it. So it's I remember it now. Child porn case dropped as U.S. refuses to show software code used to crack encryption. And that's what it was. This was back in 2017. It was Vancouver. I was close. I remember I told you I thought it was around Seattle. It was Vancouver. Yeah. And
so this wasn't even a U.S. issue?
No. Our Vancouver. Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
I was wondering that when the way you said, oh, it was like, I was thinking of you didn't know we had a Vancouver, did you?
Yeah.
I did not.
You learned something new. Code behind forces prosecutors to dismiss charge against Vancouver school worker. Now, this guy was running, I mean, if you go into it, this was one of the large, I think it was actually the single kiddie porn bust of all time, basically. And
what?
Yeah, I don't remember. It had some creepy fucking name. I'm seeing in here. Oh, Jesus Christ. What was it called? Hang on a second. I'll see if I can post this article. Hang on.
Allison posted this Jeffrey Epstein thing. Is that what we're talking about?
No, it has nothing to do with that.
No. Completely different.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jeffrey Epstein's going back to federal court because, well, everyone their dog knew that was at the highest level. So now what they're trying to do with Epstein is they're trying to undo a case that's been federally sealed off on, which you can do. It's very hard. But they're saying that this is egregious. He took a plea deal for like months in state jail, did like 2 months, and the rest was on house arrest. and they dismissed a shitload of federal counts. They're saying that it was done because of corruption, so they're asking the federal court to reopen it to allow them to prosecute them again.
Wow.
Yeah, it can happen, but it's very, very hard. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if
I'll post now.
If you can post a link in chat so that we can take a look at what you're talking about, that'd be great. That's wild. That is so wild. Was this not public knowledge? Was this not given like a lot of coverage?
I don't know. Kind of hard. I mean, I'm kind of here we go. I just posted it now. It comes up, and I'm trying to find.
Claim against teacher. Holy shit!
I'm trying to find. There's another. Shit, hell if I know. There's one from the Texas Bar Journal that was in there. I think it is. I mean, I remember when the bust happened. It was huge. It came out and everything else. I want to say the place was called like the Playpen or something. It had a really creepy fucking name.
And this was big in the news? Because I'm not.
Oh yeah.
When did this happen?
Here it is. The child porn website called the Playpen operated on Tor, which provided users anonymity. It had more than 50,000 millions of images and videos categorized.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was big. I mean, I remember. I'll post the Chicago Tribune. This one's a little bit better written.
Are you sure that was the biggest one? Well, yeah. I mean, if we're talking about, did you say 150,000 members?
Yeah, worldwide.
God damn.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about an Interpol case where they had busted a child porn ring, and I think it was
that was out of.
Yeah, it was like 10 or 15,000 members. It included members of parliament, and officials from different European countries, like Italy, like some official out of Italy and other people. But it was like 10 or 15,000 members. That's a big number, and you can 150,000.
Yeah, possibly more. I've seen as high as 250,000. It's hard to tell. I mean, obviously with encryption, there's people that have multiple accounts and shit like that. But this was the largest. It may have been surpassed then. I mean, I don't actively seek out kiddie porn busts. This one just stuck out in my mind because of the technology expert.
And with good reason.
At the time,
I totally understand why.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it was the absolute largest. That I'm positive.
It makes you wonder what is the connection between people in positions of power and child pornography or child sex. This there seems to sort of a tie or some sort of connection. Because it comes up too often. It's too often that people in positions of power and influence end up being connected somehow to child, whatever you call it, pedophilia. For some reason, I don't remember the name of it. Like that's what. Doesn't it seem like it seems all too often connected?
It does. I don't know what the answer is. I memean, I don't do much federal stuff. Criminal defense. I'm actually my license for the Western District, but I don't know. Federal's its own beast. And the reason I say that is most of your kiddie porn cases go to the federal court. You'll have every now and then a state case. But usually they tack it on to, hey, we're charging them, ag sex assault of a child or continuous sexual abuse. By the way, we're going to do these 3,000, kiddie porn images we found at the same time. But most of it goes to federal. So I don't know. I don't really have much contact with that element, to be honest with you. But you're right, though. It does seem there is a kind of a theme. It's like which is odd because, you have a bunch of money. You can buy pussy, dude. Yeah.
A in chat that she says too much money makes you sick, which makes you what causality? Is it people who are into kids? I mean, is it access? Is it that you get the power and the influence and then you become sick and then you decide, hey, I want to fuck kids? Or did you, or more, you want to fuck kids, so you decide to go into some position of power and influence so that you can cover up your, proclivities? What's the cause?
Yeah, man, that's a hard one. Well,
right?
To be honest, though, each pervert's kind of made different. My most recent case I just got done with. It was a child sex assault case. We just wrapped up about 3 weeks ago, I guess, right before Thanksgiving, or 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. To be honest, guy prayed and did all this stuff, but there was a series of other crimes. And I asked him, what the hell? Why'd you do it? And he goes, I just can't help myself. I see something, and this guy literally had no impulse control. I think he would have assaulted. He saw an opportunity. The fact that the girl was 12 was kind of an afterthought. If it had been a 35-year-old, Pat would have gone after it just quickly. He was an opportunist, and that's why. I mean, he did shit. He was charged with arson. Why'd you burn the building? I don't know. I wanted to see it. Okay, I mean, that's not rational. So I really stopped trying to, I guess, figure out especially on those kind of crimes a long time ago, because I drive myself insane. They don't make any.
Yeah,
make any
and plus,
sense.
like, it's that person is not indicative of everyone that
no,
is a pedophile. Because like there are
the majority of your pedophiles assaulted or abuses kids. That is one thing.
Right.
That
those are highly correlated, and there's also like a kind of like a lot of cases where the pedophile in question is exclusively pedophilic, like they're not attracted to adults. Whereas this person seemed to be, and it was just a matter of opportunity.
Well, now that brings up a curious question, because with a lot of these government officials, there's a lot of generational involvement, meaning like families. The Bush family's been involved in politics for at least two generations now. The Clintons, you've got generational members over in Europe, people who pass down their kids politics, and then those people's kids end up in politics. So my curiosity is, if the majority of pedophiles are people who were preyed upon as children, are they? Do you see where I'm going? Are these people touching their kids, these politicians, and then their kids go and touch their own kids? Like,
I think child abuse and child sex abuse, especially, more widespread than anyone really talks about or realizes.
Because of the easy access and the fact that it's so much easier to hide.
Well, I think it's actually harder to hide nowadays. But I know, my own family, and my own family.
If you sexually an adult, as opposed to you can make a child afraid, or you can manipulate them more easily, right? You can make a child believe that what you're doing is not wrong, or that it's a fun little game, or what. They're young, they're dumb, they don't know any better. Or you can scare the shit out of them and be like, tell anybody, I'll murder you, your dog, your whole family. Then they just shut the fuck up and they don't tell anybody you're touching them. You can't get away with that as easily with an adult, right?
So what you see a lot of times, that's why you have outcries that come out. And you have so many people that are now in their 20s or sometimes even 30 that are saying, hey, you know what, my step, or sometimes my own biological father raped me. And as defense attorney, you kind of like those cases because you're like, well, shit, all it is he said. But you also hate them because most jurors are like, well, why don't you lie about that? So a lot of them actually, right, when kids don't say anything, because you get a lot of shit when you're a kid. As you grow older, you realize certain things aren't as a appear, so these people grow up, they come of age, and then they suddenly look back and they go, "Oh, holy shit, something happened." Then they make an outcry, and so like in Texas, that's where I practice. Other states, what we did was there's statute of limitations are, right? Basically, it's the time limit you have to bring a criminal action. So
sure.
There used to be statute of limitations. I mean, way back in the day, and this is back in the 40s or whatever, it was probably like 5 years. Then it was up to 10 years. Then it went by a metric of, okay, it's now 10 years from their 18th birthday. And then they finally said no limitations at all. So if it happened, and so what they've done is, because they realize this, you had people that are coming out, when they're 40 years old saying, "Hey, old man, Smith molested me." And here's what's crazy. A lot of times when they go and confront them, the molester, because they know they're fucked up to beyond reach, they'll actually admit to it. You'd be shocked. A huge percentage admit to it. These people are saying, "Oh my God, I couldn't help myself. I'm so ashamed." But the limitation of run like, "Well, fuck, we can't do it. You shouldn't have done that and stop raping kids." But I mean, that's the end of it. Yeah, but
I know that's not supposed to be funny. It's and the reality of it isn't funny. I'm just laughing at the delivery.
No. I know. Trust me, I'm not. I'm about the least sensitive, offendable person ever. Look at I But so that's what happens. And again, it's a weird phenomenon. I don't know why. I think it is. They know that they're fucked up in the head, because when they're confronted, they're Mirandized, they're given all their rights, they're given every opportunity, and they spill their guts as if, and I mean, they'll break down in tears as if they've been waiting a lifetime to share the story. And then again, it goes back to it. I'm not going to mention this case is on appeal, but when I was a second year lawyer, just barely out. I was 1.5 years out. I had this unfortunate deal to have to sit on. It was actually the worst kiddie porn case in Bexar County history. And but same thing, when they confront him with it, the guy, he spilled his guts. I mean, he told everything. And then, he thought, okay.
Really?
Then when the state said, well, our plea offer 2 years in prison, well, shit, then we had to go to trial. So it's, like I said, I don't try to make sense of pedophiles. They're a weird fucking group.
To say the least. What's curious to me is, do you think that it's the amount of time the scenarios you were given where these people spill their guts, you're 30, 40 years of time between the act being perpetrated and them being caught and divulging the truth of it.
Yeah.
All that time, because we are all, after all, we're only human. So sitting with knowledge, do you think it just stewed and rooted itself and festered until they just and they were only remained quiet because nobody caught them and they were just waiting to this is like release? Was it because they sat there all that time? Do you think that they would be as eager to divulge and pour their heart and cry and spill their guts if they'd been 5 years instead of 40?
No, and I think also, again, it's kind of a mental illness. Treat mental illness, it gets worse. It's degenerative. And pedophilia is. It's a mental illness. That's not even up for debate in my mind. I'm not trying to say, we defend that. Somebody has Alzheimer's, I don't hold that against them. Somebody's a pedophile, I do. I don't care if you're sick in the head, you're fucking sick. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I
think what it is they go on, but one of the biggest issues is they realize that they're not right, but they don't understand why. And this is one of the deals that we saw, and I'm sure y'all had it there too, but there was a big deal with our clergy in San Antonio several years ago. In fact, several
I don't know if you've heard, but there's a big deal with the clergy all over the world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, we actually had members of my own family, aunts, and were, systematically abused by,
Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it was years. And the thing is, they actually told the time actually said, "How dare you speak out against the church?" I mean, this was big Catholics. They used to call the church was God. You know what I mean? It was just a different time there. But the priest they finally confronted, I don't even remember the bastard's name. You know, he actually fucking croaked about a year ago. Good riddance. But
right.
You know,
well, as far as I'm concerned, he got off easy.
Yeah. And again, it was past limitations, past everything. You know, all they had was kind of a sit down, a confrontation, and, you know, this cathartic, you know, you piece of shit. But he basically said, "I know I'm wrong," and he broke down, and he knew he was fucked up in the head. So as time's going on, and that's one reason why you find it in the clergy, because they flee there because they think, okay, there's something wrong with me. If I go and be celibate, then, you know, that's actually a common mentality. Of course, it doesn't work out that way, you know?
Right.
Because they don't care. You know, if they're at a certain point, they're attracted to females, are going to find themselves attracted to boys. It's just a disaster. But yeah, I think that if it was immediately afterward, not as much. I think years and years of decay, it just compounds shit. And,
right.
You know, makes it
eats away at you. You know, 40 years of time where you play that scenario over and over again. You relive it, and you see, you know, you're left with the aftermath of it, and there's no getting away from it, right? You did this thing, and if you're not completely devoid of humanity, that has to affect you negatively. It has to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't know. It's a fucked up deal. Yeah, I don't particularly enjoy any kind of sex case, especially now with there's kids involved. But you know, sometimes that's the way it goes.
Yeah. I don't know, man. You know, did you end up seeing that movie? Speaking about the, yeah.
I've seen it. It was pretty well done, actually.
Yeah, I loved that movie. And you know what's funny is, I remember when that went down, and I remember thinking to myself then, why is this not a bigger issue? Why are we not? You know, why it was in the public eye, and yet the outrage just didn't seem as big as I thought it should be. It seemed like people were just kind of like, oh yeah, wow, that's bad.
As I remember
it just seems kind of lackluster. Like, how are we not all outraged that the people who are supposed to be holier than thou, who tell the rest of us how much of a terrible sinner we are the biggest sinners of all, and are predators. They've been fucking our kids. Like, how is this not? Why are we not burning churches? Why aren't we fucking hanging them in the streets? How is this not happening? And it didn't seem to drive that kind of outrage, and I couldn't fathom that at the time. I still can't. I still feel like I'm an atheist, but I feel like, and I want to support the church. I really do, because I feel like it has a place in societal structure that nothing else is fulfilling. It promotes family unit, the family unit. It promotes the family structure. It promotes community in ways that there's no other institution that does. If we religion, if we got rid of the church, there's nothing that does those things the way the church does.
Yeah.
So there'd be that could fill the void and replace those needs. So in that way, church, but I don't understand how anybody could, after that, how can anybody Catholic, how can you openly say, hey, I'm a proud Catholic?
Yeah. So
when your own church is filled with people fucking kids, and the guy at the top is saying, yeah, we just kind of move them around and just don't look at that, and like, it's bad, but yeah, just shut up about it, all right? Like,
yeah.
Well, I think the important thing is for Catholics specifically, when this kind of thing occurs, they need to call it out and get their house in order. And because the problem though is when this kind of thing happens, the mainstream critics of religion will basically use this as an opportunity to say, like, oh, look, I told you, like, these people are awful. And then it's when those kind of generalizations are made, it's very easy to go on the defensive and say, well, screw you, we're not like that bad. And it's like, yeah, no, you do have a serious problem. Like,
yeah,
but like, two things can be true at once. And like, Hollywood's problem of, sexual abuse and everything can be, more significant than that of the Catholic Church. And both problems are equally wrong, and, deserve attention within their respective communities.
It's really hard. It's hard to take any sort of criticism from any religious person, and any of the, like a Christian or a Catholic, directed at Islam seriously because of this. Like, yeah, you can argue that you're not mass murdering people. No, you're just damaging lives for the rest of their life. Like, you are doing so much damage. You're sticking your dick in children and making them fucking just damaged goods for the rest of their fucking lives, who have so much mental and emotional trauma that they can't get past for life. Like, your emotional, physical, mental, you're doing damage in massive ways, just different ways. And you can't, I can't take you seriously when you go, hey, we're better than them, or they're bad because they're doing those things and we don't do those things. Go fuck yourselves. You have no right to talk shit at all. Like, all.
Are you talking an average Catholic or one that was actually like involved in this scandal?
So
certainly those who were involved. I know I keep cutting off Adam and I talk too much. Give me one quick second, Adam. I know you want to talk. Certainly those who were involved. But the average Catholic, I know. Yes, I'm the average Catholic. I had nothing to do with that. You can't blame me for the actions of the church or these priests who were fucking those kids. No. Are you still a Catholic? Have you actively done anything aside from public denouncement and saying, hey, that's wrong? Have you done anything to take part in cleaning your house, in fucking changing the way shit is in your fucking church? That's your church. Have you done anything about it? If you haven't done anything about it, guess what? Fuck you. You don't have any voice. You have no say. Go fuck yourself. You're condoning what they're doing by doing nothing about it.
Yeah. So I'll say this. Yeah. Here's what I think the biggest difference is. This last generation, well, I would say the last two generations, my grandmother, to a slightly lesser extent, my parents, was the last of a generation. What I mean by that is this: the Catholic Church was, it went from God down to the church, and then there was everything else. At least, I don't know if y'all, at least that's how it was in my family. Both sides, mom and dad, were what I call militant Catholic. They were very, very Catholic.
Is there any other kind?
Yeah. So, but not anymore. Not today. That's where I think the difference is. Again, on my mom's side, I think, I know for a fact, two of them spoke out, hey, this guy is doing something, and they got criticized. How dare you fucking speak out? So, why nothing happened? Was the center point of their life. But then if you look at, especially after the Boston Globe scandal, the one that Spotlight, first off, when that broke, it was full timing, right before 9/11. So we had bigger issues, and then, 17 years of war to follow. So there was distractions. You did see it, and church attendance is down, and it's no longer the kind of linchpin. So, I know very few. There are a handful that revolve church, but to be honest with you, it's as they get older, the kids are all coming to college age. They're going off and doing their own thing. I mean, I go and everything else thing, but it's not the my life was like,
right.
And so you have seen a change, and it's going, and the church is desperately trying to get back to where they were. I mean, not with the molestation. That's terrible. And I don't think anyone.
But they're actively covering this stuff. They're still active.
They are.
There has not.
I think those that are covering it up deserve to be condemned. I think that lumping every Catholic person in it as kind of complicit in that is really disingenuous. I don't know if that's your intention.
Okay,
but that's...
so you disagree with me on that. That's fair. I can understand that. I mean, you're religious, so you're coming from.
I'm not even Catholic though. Like, that's the thing.
Like, I know you're not, but still,
I mean, it's just the principle of saying, oh, somebody in, not even you specifically, but somebody in your group did something bad, therefore you're guilty. I have a problem with that.
But we're not talking about someone. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of someones.
The point is people that aren't you did something bad, therefore you're guilty. That does not follow.
No. I understand that, and I'm not saying you're responsible for what the people in your group do. You are, however, if you know nothing about it, if you find out going on and you don't take an active role in doing something to change it, how is that not complicity? How is it not complicity? Like, how does that, how do you find out? Like, let's say the Pope finds out all his fucking cardinals and all his priests are fucking, he never did, and he knows nothing about it, which is fucking, there's no way that could ever happen, but whatever. Like, and oh wow, that's horrible. I can't believe that. I would never condone that. And that's as far as he goes with it. Is that, well, you can't blame the Pope for what those other guys did, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, if we hold, it's like, really, it's kind of like a CEO,
Sure.
I
mean definitely hold the Pope accountable.
Okay,
I'm sure.
So why is it stand where I'm coming at with the Pope, but not with your average churchgoers? Is it because of the power
the
status?
question is, what power do they have to affect change? What kind of actions are you talking about that is kind of the minimum threshold of doing something to change it?
Do you remember what Ireland did? The Catholic Embassy in Ireland, they shut that shit down. When they found out about this, they fucking shut it down. They said, fuck Catholic Church. Ireland. Where you're Catholic before you're even born. Like over there. So, I mean, there's nothing you can do. It just seems...
I didn't say there was nothing you can do. I'm asking what the average, like, churchgoer, like, basically, like, somebody not in actual power, what can they do? Like, this is an actual question.
Well, that's a valid question. What can you do? I would say that you could petition the church to take action. You could actively seek to protest the church for its ineffectiveness or reluctance to address the problem, acknowledge the problem, do anything about the problem, resolve the problem. And there's, of course, the last-ditch effort, which is to actively step away from the church, to make it a public thing, to other members who are equally as upset and refused. If you don't fix the problem, we want nothing to do with you or your church or your religion. We're out. Fix your shit, or we're done with you.
Yeah, okay.
And that's hard to do. I get it. And maybe I'm not understanding, because I'm not religious myself and I wasn't raised Catholic. Maybe I don't have that background to know how hard or difficult that would be for somebody raised in the church. I get that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't have that either. The actual like experience I have with the Catholic Church directly is very slim. But yeah, I mean, all of those are certainly things that people can do and should do. It's more of a matter of, like, what is the threshold to the point where, if they're actively condemning it, what is the minimum thing that they need to be doing in order to not be complicit? You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, and I get you on that, and that would need established, and I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
As far as establishing a minimum of activity, like what do you do? What's the minimum thing
I'm in
you
favor
should
of
be doing?
all of those things you named.
Right.
It's just basically like, I mean, obviously, like the priests that committed the actual acts are primarily to blame. I would say the Pope is probably in a very tight second.
Here's
by
the issue,
doing
though.
nothing about it, and actively
the
trying to cover
structure,
it up.
Right. Here, that's the thing, is that you have from a top down an entire institution that was aware of what was going on for decades, that actively moved priests around like it was a goddamn checkers game, right? So you get caught in fucking Jersey touching kids, and they move you down to South America so that you have a whole brand new flock to tend to of people who don't know you and don't know that you've been fucking diddling kids in Jersey. So, and this is what they did. They played that little that game on the street that they do with the cups, and you put the ball in one cup and then you move the cups around and you where's the ball? Like, that's what they did with these goddamn priests.
Yeah.
And the church actively did that.
It's awful.
Right. So even those in power, right? You have an institution where everybody knew what was happening, and people in the highest echelons were actively seeking to cover up what was going on, and succeeded in doing so for decades. That can't fucking.
I know we're in complete agreement that kind of behavior is unacceptable. Like there's no opposition for me on that.
So it's I don't know. I just can't imagine how if I had been raised in the church and found that out, how I could continue to call myself a Catholic. I really don't. I don't know how I could marry those two things or resolve the issue in my head. I don't know how I could do that. How do I continue to call myself a Catholic and separate it from being involved in an institution that was from the top down involved in covering up baby fucking? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, but you don't really have any faith. You're talking about people who have faith in in Jesus and the Bible and in confessional and a whole lot of institutions that in and of themselves are not pedophilia related. Yes, there's a shit ton of this and covered up and everything. They're not going to give up their because of that, especially with people who actually believe that.
It's because the institution itself is not fundamentally about the pedophilia. The pedophilia is an evil thing that happened under the structure of this institution, but the institution itself is not fundamentally about that. There's nothing in Catholic doctrine that condones this, No,
there's not. But that's so now we're okay. So now we're discussing faith. Okay, which I haven't put into that up until this point. So now you want to bring that up. How does this not cause a crisis of faith? Because is the church and the religion not tied together? If they're not, then can you not separate the two and say, I still believe in God. I am no longer a member of this church. This church is responsible for what happened here, and I will not be a part of that.
But
that church does not represent my God. But under Catholic rule, what is below, right? As above, so below. What the church? What's the doctrine? This is the problem with not being an actual member.
Yeah.
There's essentially what the church says goes, right? They made an agreement with God. So whatever the church says is acceptable, or whatever the church is law, or whatever, God will then adjust to meet that.
I don't think that's true. No.
I swear to God. Which I guess they can't do that because I'm atheist. But no. That's like Catholic religion. That's in their Bible. Like, that's the deep story of it. Like, God granted the institution, right? Like, the Pope is the voice of God on earth, essentially. He's the representative of God.
That doesn't mean he gets to change God's will.
No, that's not what I'm saying. He's not changing God's will.
Or God's
rules. But in order for things
anything
to be matched, right? So I'm not saying that this somehow is used to condone what's going on. It hasn't been. But this is a Catholic doctrine. It's in there. This is part of their religion. Like, what the God and the church agreed a long time ago when everything was settled, back in the beginning days or whatever, that if the church decided to change it, this is what Dogma, the movie Dogma, that's what that's based on. It's based on the idea that the church makes a change in doctrine, and when the church makes that change, God has to agree to it. Not has to, but has agreed to change his doctrine to match it, so that there's symmetry or what have you. You guys seen Dogma?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Okay, so do you know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking out of my ass here. I'm not making shit up.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Everybody else is quiet right now. They're like, what the fuck is he talking about? He is making shit up.
I've never seen that movie.
Just waiting for you to get there.
What?
I said, just waiting for you to get there.
But I'm not. Fucking Adam knows the other one. And he's a lawyer, so fuck you guys. All I'm saying is, if you're making the case that somebody would stay with the church based on their faith, then what you're saying is that people see the church and the faith as being the same. They're tied.
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so then they're separate.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then why would you, as a Catholic, not separate yourself from the church? An institution that has for decades been fucking kids.
You can't.
Well,
if you separate yourself from the church, if they're separate, then you are not abandoning your faith. The only case you can make for saying they're not willing to separate from the church because they're not willing to abandon their faith is if you're admitting that the faith and the church are the same.
So, all right. So there's a couple issues with it. First off, so I guess here's the best analogy I can say. Yeah, you're right. There are priests throughout the church that have done some serious kitty fucking and other bad things, right? And everything else. I can tell you, my church. First off, I'm part of the a kind of a Middle Eastern Orthodox still. I'm a dirty Lebanese. What can I say? But so we're a little bit kind of off the beaten path for your traditional Roman Catholic. That's number one.
Okay.
And everything else. So I don't I don't know. I guess you can say I'm not. I don't know. I think we're true Catholic, but some would say we're not. But more than that, though, I think the church was just kind of more community, and especially the one that we grew up in. You have this group and everything, but and that's what I'm saying. It's a bit different for my generation as opposed to my parents. The priests, whatever. We've gone through like 6, 7, 8 priests. I don't even know. I really don't give that much of a crap about what the priest is. It's more about the community of kind of who makes up the parish at large. And those aren't the ones I'm worried about, kitty fucking and all the other stuff, so I understand what you're saying, and maybe that is kind of the answer to it. At least my relationship with the church has changed, or is different than for my parents is. And I think a lot of it is because what I've seen, I don't sit there and grovel at the feet in the altar of the priest or the bishop and, worship the very ground he, I don't even know who the fuck my bishop is. I got to be honest. So
right.
it's just different now. I think people are doing that, what you're talking about. They are leaving the church in a way, but you still have a community. That's
right.
Yeah. I mean,
all right. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna unmute Allison and I'm gonna get her in here because boy. I think she's actually Catholic and she's been wanting to talk for a while. So I'm going to unmute her. Allison, you should be. Are you there? Allison,
you are unmuted.
All right.
No, I am pissed at you right now because you're so full of shit. You don't know anything about Catholicism. You don't know anything about any religion. How are you going to... And Muslims, I'm going to give you a prime example so that you can comprehend.
Are you
Muslims all Muslim? No, I'm Catholic, but I'm going to give you an example. I've lived with a Muslim.
But you can speak on Muslims, even though you're not a Muslim.
I lived with a Muslim. I lived with one.
Even though I'm not.
No, I'm going to give you an example.
I wanted to establish. I wanted to understand.
Yes.
How we're doing.
Yes. Okay. So now.
Sure.
Muslims still go to church and worship, even though some of them are terrorists. You don't abandon your faith. It's called faith for a reason. And only an atheist would have that asinine view. Oh, there's some pedos in the church. First of all,
I never said you should abandon your faith.
It's a fucked up thing. But those pedos in those churches, most of them didn't even know what was going on. Like most people that went to church didn't even know what was going on. And I'm from Boston. So most of them didn't even know what was going on because what they did was they moved one person to another place. And then if they touch someone there, they move them to another place or another country. And then they put these things like sabbaticals where they put them into like kind of like gay camp for priests, but
right. Yes. To keep them away from the kids for a brief period of time, to give them a period of reflection. And hopefully get it out of the system or whatever.
It was like gay camp. It was like torture or some shit. There was like a big old, not like a movie, but it was like a documentary almost.
Yeah, they would do behavioral modification.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was.
They would put them in the house. Sabbaticals. They were called sabbaticals. So if you looked up the priest's record, it would say that he had a sabbatical or something, some type of sabbatical he was on, and he was just going to pedo camp. But that doesn't mean that anybody who goes there is a fucking pedo. First of all, the Catholic Church, and I'm a Catholic, so I'm a bad Catholic for saying this, but the Catholic Church turns around and says that nuns and priests can't have sexual lives because they're married to God. Well, first of all, everyone has fucking sex. So they what they do is they put these godly rules on humans that God made to make mistakes, because God is a very vain God. He wants to be the number one. He wants to be the best. So in all reality, he put humans and let them fuck up on their own will. No one's going to be better than God. And they make these rules in the Catholic Church so that they are equivalent to. Nobody's going to be equivalent to. Everyone has biological needs. And so then what happens is they turn around, they go to these, they take care of all these kids, and some of them are gay, right? But most of those adoptions that happened like in the 50s and 60s, most of the babies that were adopted weren't from teen moms like everyone thought. No, they were from nuns that got knocked up by fucking priests. Everything's behind closed doors. Picture all your dirty family's history, right? It's all behind closed doors. Nobody has that shit on TV, right? It's not public. That's exactly how the Catholic Church is.
Well,
and so they're religion.
Yeah, I want to chime in here. You were talking about the church, the religion being separate, which they are, and you're not asking anyone to abandon their faith.
I wouldn't expect anybody would.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Because we're not talking about God fucking kids. We're not talking about Jesus coming over and raping your little ones.
Right.
We're talking about human beings. It has nothing to do with your connection or relationship to.
Do you know?
I'm not touching that at all.
No. But here's my thing: is we're talking
9-year-olds in religion. All people have fucked little kids.
Oh, anyway, when we're talking about
more woke takes from Allison.
When we're talking about Catholicism specifically, it's a little bit harder to separate the faith and religion because of the dependency on confessional and the Eucharist.
Correct.
Is very, very much a part of their and also very, very much a part of the institution of their religion. So that it's so and
that's how I understand it, and that's certainly. This whole time, all I've been doing is asking people, what is your position on this? Are you saying that the church and the faith are tied together, or are you saying that there's steps on where the other that determines kind of where your argument should stand as to whether or not somebody has the right as a member of the church to stop.
But they might actually do more good staying within the church and vocal active and abandoning it completely.
Absolutely. I don't know. You guys hear when Adam asked me what should be?
I think we were just tuning in.
Okay.
We were just tuning in. I think I heard you kind of going along that line. Yeah.
Okay. So earlier we were talking about this all started from me saying I don't know how anybody after all of this came out about Boston, why there was an outrage, why churches weren't being burned, why priests weren't being hung from streetlights, why wasn't there more of an outrage? And I said, if I had been a member of that church, if I were a Catholic, that's the kind of outrage I would have had.
Yeah.
And I said, as much as you can't, as much as I'm outraged by those people involved in the cover-up and those people involved in the pederasty, I'm equally outraged by those who discovered it after it was made public and
did nothing.
Did nothing. Who remained a member of the church and who just said, that's bad.
Because they go through the court, though. You see what I'm saying? They go through that court thing. So it's really not made to public eyes because then there's a non-disclosure agreement that the family
was. Certainly, that's how it was. But that's not the case anymore. It's public knowledge now.
No, the church actually has their own court that takes like hierarchy over like the federal court type shit. It's some weird fucking crap.
No.
Technically, you know what I'm talking about. They sign their in-house shit, and then they have their families.
Adam still here?
Yeah, no.
No,
I'm not talking about higher over. I'm not talking about over the court. I'm talking about they sign non-disclosure shit so that they can't do anything, and then.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on that, Adam?
Okay. So it's not a court. What you're referring to is it's either a mediation or arbitration agreement that's coupled with a confidentiality agreement. So, this is, and they talked about this in the Spotlight movie, guys, a year since I watched it, or maybe longer. What happens is these things never saw the inside of a courtroom, and that's not uncommon. I mean, it is kind of it sounds nefarious for this kind of deal, but a lot of cases in personal injury, I mean, sorry to boil it down, but this is just personal injury. We're never going to go. It's all done via letters, maybe a mediation and then a final signed agreement and a confidentiality, but it's not a court or anything else. Now, if there is anything filed under an arbitration agreement with confidentiality, those records are sealed. And I think that's what they kind of talked about in the movie, but it's still recorded in the courthouse. I mean, there's only one court. They're the truth is, most of the time they don't ever really see the halls of a court, though, other than to record the arbitration agreement there. It's all under seal. Only person who's ever going to look at it is going to be the judges or court clerks. Let's see, he has posted something in the Middle Ages. Yeah, I don't think we have those. Yeah, we don't have those today. So
right. So my point being is that as a member of the church, I feel that, like Nicole was saying, you have confession and what was the other thing you mentioned, Nicole?
The Eucharist.
The Eucharist. Can you go over that for those of us who don't know what that is?
Me or her?
Or actually, Adam, you could probably do a better job than me.
Whichever of you can dumb it down and make it palatable.
All right. So the Eucharist, Catholics basically believe in transubstantiation. So when you take the body and blood of Christ, that it actually comes into the actual body and blood of Christ. That's the official teachings. All is that confessional is required. Now, I'll be honest with you. I went to exactly one confessional.
This is my body. This is my blood.
Yeah. I went to one confession in my entire life because when I was a kid, and I went there, I was like, so what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to tell me, why the fuck do you anything? I don't want to talk to you. I went out
right?
Like, you don't have to talk to me when I want to. I think confession's bullshit. So I've never been a confession in 26 years or whatever it's been now. I've done wrong. I've done stuff that's between me and God. And, I don't need the priest as the middleman. And I know a lot of hardcore Catholics think I'm going to hell for that. I'll have to answer for it at the time,
And let's if I can interject for just a moment, I would like to mention that from an outside perspective, it's very clear to me that such a facet as the Eucharist and confession were devised as ways to keep you as a member of the church tied in, right? Like you're that's a way to marry and the church together as one, as the faith, and not just a man-made institution. Because when you confess, that's something, like you said, you nailed it. It's between me and God. If you put the church as the middleman and you get everybody used to that idea, then you're speaking to God when you're in that confession booth, essentially, because what you're telling them sends it up to God, right? They're now the middleman between you and God, which is what the Catholics want.
Well, at least that's how I describe themselves. They more like kind of, is another word. And again, it's not for me. It's not a perfect. And the whole growing faith, I've always kind of been skeptical. Growing up of everything, and my parents. And again, I think a lot of that was, as we talked about earlier, was their own history of of sexual abuse within the church. I think they were very cautious to kind of they kind of let my brother and I just kind of feel what you're comfortable with, but it's not going to be front and center. This is the church is everything, and you understand why. You know what I mean? Look what they had to go through, and so I'll say I don't think again, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, you're not a real Catholic," or everything else. Screw it.
Well, what's funny is And I understand what you're saying, and there's definitely been a distance in that respect from the members and the church. There's certainly a wedge, and I'm sure a good portion of that is caused by this what's the word I'm looking for? Not tragedy, but this event, this
calamity.
Fucking, yeah. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. But I remember one of the guy who raised me, Neil, had a friend who was his age. So when I was like 5 or 6, I remember we would go over to this friend of his. What was his name? I can't think of his name anymore. Anyway, this friend of his was raised Catholic. Neil, the guy who raised me, wasn't. But as I grew older, we would talk about this guy and how he had become non-practicing, but despite that, the teachings were ingrained in him, and I think it's that repetition and the ritual and rote that they put you through every time you go to church and you go to your Sunday mass and you go to Bible study and you do all these things and you learn about the angels, and every time you go in you say those specific prayers and you walk in and you dip your hand in the holy water and you do your wallet keys pocket whatever the fuck it is, you cross yourself and you do these things, and it becomes ingrained in you to the point where you don't even think about it. Like, that was something Neil would made mention of to me. He went with him somewhere for some reason to a church, and as soon as the guy walked in, like, he was actively non-practicing. Like, he was a skeptic. He didn't like the church anymore, but you put him in as soon as he walked in the church, man, he went straight to the road and ritual. Went over to the holy water. He crossed himself. Like, here's the guy who's like, nah, fuck the church, and you put him in the church and he does that automatically. And I think that's what used to be, that kind of connection and that kind of tie-in was what made those decades of kitty fucking possible. Because nobody, when your faith in the church become married as one, to say that the church is corrupt and touching your kids is in that mind frame becomes the same as saying your faith did it. If the church is responsible and the church and the faith are one, then.
But the church,
I don't know if I would word it like that.
You're blaming a whole group.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's how it used to be, and so that's the kind of crisis that you would be dealing with. But
I think he's saying that, like, it would be expected if you have a bunch of people who are not truly involved in the faith, they just kind of do all the rituals, go through the motions, but they're not truly, like, mentally involved to the point where, like, they're basically on autopilot when it comes to their religion.
Well, that's how it is now. It's not even the autopilot's kind of gone too. That distance is gone. I'm sorry. Let me correct what I just said. That distance exists now. The tie-in, the connection to the church as it used to be, has been diminished.
And so
diluted.
You're saying that autopilot, like, causes, or it opens up the door for this bad behavior on the part of the church. Is that correct?
To a sense, it makes, because if you are raised in that, I mean, go back 100 years and what the Catholic Church.
You're comparing 100 years to now, and people evolve, change, and so maybe the church is like,
of course they do. That's why they made public.
But the church, I understand what you're saying, but you think you comprehend what faith is because you've never had.
But I understand that faith is something. It doesn't mean I don't understand the concept of it. And I'm saying
understanding the concept and actually physically having faith are completely different things. You could understand like how a surgery works, but maybe not be able to perform.
That may be the case, but what is your point with that? I'm not making the argument that you should disavow your faith because of what the church did. I'm making the argument disavow the church for what the church did.
I understand what you're saying, but listen, okay, religion and God are not combined with church technically, because God is the creator, right? So God is the creator, and humans who makes all the time run the church. So you're blaming what happened to the whole entire religion, which is not like, it's not the same.
I'm not in the religion. Well, that's not true. I guess I'm blaming the religion, but I'm not blaming the faith. They're two different things.
Listen, no. What you're okay?
Is the Catholic Church the religion?
Listen, the runners of the church are not the religion. Do you see what I'm?
Then shouldn't you think about it? Like, I'm not going to be a part of something that they run if they have run it into, like, you're just a member. They run the shit.
I guess
right?
I will say this. There's a lot of Catholic friends of mine that even before all this scandal, basically like this latest pope, basically from the moment he was, sworn in or whatever the term is for the pope,
right.
He said a lot of like radical things, and a lot of my Catholic friends have basically said like, no, like the Pope is wrong about this, like, which
he is very wrong.
Is bold
Nobody
for a
likes
Catholic,
that.
like, but they are still Catholic. They still profess to the faith. There is a difference between submitting to the Catholic Church as an entity and submitting to its specific leadership. And I think that's the distinction that needs to be made here. Is that people should disavow the leadership. They don't have to disavow the church as a whole. And that's also different from disavowing the faith, which I think we all agree disavowing the faith is, obviously completely
that's
ridiculous.
Off the table. We're not even talking about that. I'm not making that argument.
Yeah.
We don't
but
even
it's
have
really
to talk
three
about
different
faith.
things here. It's really three different things.
But here's the problem. Number one, there's a big difference between the Pope saying, I think this about this, and so I think the church should go this way, and the rest of, the flock saying, well, I don't know if I agree with him on that, as opposed to, oh yeah, we've kind of been
of course they're different. Like, morally speaking, they are
your kids.
Have you ever heard the Bible? Have you ever heard the Bible?
Have I heard of the Bible? I've heard.
Heard, like read the Bible. No, like as in read or listened to.
Yes, I've read both the King James.
Okay, so then that everything that happened back then, there was station, there was like Sodom and Gomorrah, there was like homophobia, there was all this shit. So now the church is trying to still make so that everybody lives back in fucking medieval days. And it's not, that's why everyone's so lax when they go to church. And so, yes, people aren't going to be like, my kid. Those people were like in the 50s and 60s and what have you. And they were like devout Catholics. They had no idea what was really going on, and they thought their kids were lying about it.
I really feel like this got convoluted somehow. I feel like we've gone off the rails. Right? Is it just me? I feel like
we've kind of like explored this space for quite some time now.
Yeah, I think Adam.
I felt the same way, but I was trying to get back on track. I don't feel like it can be.
Okay, so can we get back to the beating of the kids? Because I have some issues about the beating on the kids.
Sure. Let's talk about beating on kids. Let's do it.
Okay, while I was at the store, that's why I couldn't talk. Okay, I wasn't driving. I had
you
just
literally
gotten to the
said
car.
you were driving multiple times.
No, I said yes, I'm driving. I said I'm not driving. I did correct myself. Shithead. Anywho,
excuse you.
Listen,
I am quoting you. Okay,
when we were,
you don't get mad. You're not allowed to get mad at me for quoting you.
I'm just glad it's not me this time.
You're mistaken. So it's talking back to their parents, and parents are like, "Oh, it's acceptable." It's not acceptable because what they teach their kids that you can talk back. So
no.
You need one ass whooping, and the reason why I believe in this wholeheartedly is that kid needs to know if they pass a certain line, they are getting the fuck shit out of them. And they walk a thin line. They don't fuck up. They don't.
Can I ask you real quick? Can you define what is beating the shit out of them to you specifically?
Oh, you listen. I have okay. So I have an adopted.
You give them a black eye and a black lip, or are you just swatting them on the butt with your open hand? What is beating the shit out of you specifically to you?
Portuguese will have your ass go outside and get a fucking switch.
Okay,
like
so
when you mess up, there is legitimate. Yes, you will get the shit whipped out of you. But you know what? You get one ass whipping, you know where the hell you stand. You're like, no. Because as soon as whatever the facial feature was before they got their ass whipped, their parent made, as soon as they start seeing signs of it, they're like, no, we're good. Because they have like PTSD from that ass whipping. And so when the government says you can't spank your kid, then you allow your kid to say, no, I'm going to call 911 if you hit me. Motherfucker, I will whoop your ass for the 20 minutes it's going to take 911 to get here. Because if I'm going to jail for something, it's going to be something good. I'll tell you right now, my adopted son, he heard this shit. He told me, he's like, you can't hit me. And he was a little boy from Africa. So he was like, oh, Mom, you cannot hit me. I will call 911. I picked up the switch.
That's pretty good.
Gave him the phone. I gave him the phone and said, call 911. And I picked up the switch. And I was like, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get here. So you're going to get your ass whooped for the whole time.
Yeah. That was a Russell Peters bit.
Right into
that was directly from stand-up.
Oh, that wasn't directed from anybody. This is like straight how I was raised, and I don't have a criminal record, so I'm.
Well, I saw some stand up where some guy said that the kid said he was going to call child services, and he said, "Well, when they get here, I'll whip them too."
No, I haven't. No, this was Russell Peters, who's Indian stand-up comedian. And he was doing a bit where he's like, white people, please beat your kids. And basically talking about how, like, because he grew up in Jamaica, and everyone there, he's like, because, with black people and, like, with, basically anyone that's not white, they'll go to school, say, Mama, my dad beat my butt last night, my mom beat my butt last night. And he's like, and so white people, when these kids are talking about, the whooping that they got the previous night, do you want your child to be left out? And then he goes into like the story of like this white friend that he had who was like, oh yeah, no, you can just call child services and everything. And he's so then he tries it on his dad, and his dad basically said that, which was like, go ahead and call them. But let me tell you this, it will take them 20 minutes to get here. And in that time, somebody gonna get hurt real bad.
Yeah. That's like the thing his dad says all the time.
When a kid knows exactly what you're going to do, then they know it's routine. So they can do whatever they want because they know what buttons to push.
Well, I think Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Once kids cross a certain line, like, honestly, they know, like, you'll see it. Like, when parents are, like, with their friends or out at dinner or whatever, and their kids are with them, and their kids are bored, they'll start fucking with their parents, like, Mom, Dad, and they start like just interrupting them. That's bullshit. They need to get their ass whooped in general.
Now, okay,
so they don't act
counterpoint
like
to that. Counterpoint. And I talked about this earlier, but how much of that is a lack of actual, like, physical beating, and how much of it is just they've taken away the spanking and replaced it with absolutely nothing? Like, there's no punishment whatsoever.
You need to have, and I get that, but in all honesty, here in Arizona, this happened probably like 3 or 4 years ago. A lady got put in jail because she was caught on camera swatting her little kid on the bottom. And I shit you not, it was a poop on the bottom. And her ass.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up too.
I will say this in regards to that issue. We talked, I do feel that physical punishment for the most part.
But there's a difference, JT, between torture and punishment.
Discipline your kids. You should definitely discipline your kids. And like Adam said, it's a matter of saying that you'll discipline them and then following through and actually doing it. Kids crave structure. They need it. Yes. They want it. And they love it when you give it to them. But I do also agree on the other end of things that we as a society have allowed the government to take too big of a role in coming in and deciding what is and isn't acceptable as a parent. Don't fucking come in.
Because there was a lot of drug addicts that were actually chaining up their kids and committing abuse. And so then the government overstepped like they usually do.
When I'm burning my kids for fucking, shits and giggles.
Absolutely, that's abuse.
Come on into my house and fucking stop me. But if all I'm doing is swatting my kid on the fucking ass, you don't have any fucking right. You can tell me you disagree with my parenting skills. You can tell me that's not how you would raise your kids. You absolutely can do that. You don't get to force me to do what you want when it comes to raising my child. You don't get that.
But that's basically a communist country. It's how America's turned.
Child Protective Services has gotten way out of hand. And it's two extremes. Either they come in and they take away shit because they say they view what you're doing as abuse and it's really not, or
I got to tell you about something.
Ignore the abuse, or they ignore the abuse. We had a case here where some kid was fucking getting beat on a regular basis, and the fucking Child Protective Services did nothing about it until the kid was fucking dead. Now
Arizona's been on the news
are going to court and being brought up on charges for negligence, for not doing their job, because this kid fucking died on their watch.
Arizona is notorious for that, JT. Like, seriously, they have like a
we're not any better over here.
No, they have a 6-year backup. Check this out. This is all over the news here. So this lady and her husband, they used to be, drug addicts back in the day, right? She, they had done drugs. She found out she was pregnant. They cleaned their shit up. Long story short, her house got raided. It was nothing to do with them. It was the wrong address or whatever, or somebody made some complaint. They just came in, they raided the house. They took the kid. They took her away. Long story short, that little 4-year-old kid was placed into 3 different foster homes. In those 3 different foster homes, the child was scalded. She was burned. And then the last foster home was sexual trafficking. There was a fucking pedo that the FBI had alert that were foster parents. And so every time the mom, it's a bullshit.
This is the unluckiest kid in the world.
It gets worse.
Like, seriously.
The kid cried to go to the mom. The mom did everything under the sun, jumped through hoops for CPS, right?
Whatever they said. The vetting process for becoming a foster parent.
Well, apparently it's not that much if they let a fucking pedophile. He was actually in a pedophile ring, and the FBI was the one who nodded. Anyways,
how the fuck does that happen?
The girl ended up being adopted. So her case was against the mom, and kept on saying the mom was on drugs, right? So she had these supervised visitation rights. The girl used to cry going back to the foster home and was happy going to see her mom. The mom complained about the kid having a UTI for several weeks because there was an odor. It come to find out it was a fucking STD. And they blamed it on the mom. Jesus. Everything was getting pushed back. At the end of it, she ended up getting adopted out to somebody else, and the mom couldn't even get her. It's like ridiculous. It's super sad. But she started when she was 3. When it started, it was 3 until 5. So yeah, she was scalded and then taken out of that home. Like her whole front side was burned. So they took her out of that foster home, put her in another one. It like goes on and on and on about all these cases. And I know because I've worked at juvie and I've worked in homes doing med relief for kids that have been like that. And you're like, what the fuck is the state of Arizona doing? Like, I have no idea, smoking or what, but how they vet you is pulling like rabbits out of your ass. I honestly don't know what the vetting is.
I'd like to say that it is my firm opinion that child labor laws are ruining this country. Because if these kids were going to work, there wouldn't be any time to abuse them.
Thank you, Ron Swanson. You think you could make a Parks and Rec reference around me and it wouldn't get called out?
I'm sorry. I needed to lighten it up. It was getting a little heavy for me. All right, let's continue on with the.
So I have a request. Jimmy Crackcorn has been requesting this for quite a while. So a couple weeks ago, you retold your Ashton Kutcher story. Would you mind retelling it yet again?
You want the Ashton Kutcher joke?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard this before, so bear with me. Thank you for being patient and listening while I tell it again. For those of you who don't know, everybody's heard of Ashton Kutcher, right? We all know who Ashton Kutcher is.
Yep.
I have to say I didn't think much of the guy when I first found out about him. For me, it was that 70s show, and I didn't think much of the guy. I thought, that's just that idiot who fucking did that stupid Dude, Where's My Car movie. But then I guess a couple of years ago, I found out that he was actually involved in a nonprofit organization that he started that focused on finding child pornography rings online, like weeding it out, finding it, exposing it, trying to get rid of it, trying to name them involved. And he was responsible for not only starting this, nonprofit, but he had a hands-on position where he was involved in the day-to-day, apparently. He stood before Congress, I don't know, like some hour-long something. I saw some of it where he talks about, and you can see it in his eyes when he talks about this. He talks about, what he experienced, what he saw, what he dealt with, while involved with this nonprofit that he started. And it was quite a trip. I had a newfound respect for this guy, Here's somebody who was doing some good in the world. And that's why every time I, bang it out to kiddie porn now, thank God Asher is out in the world doing something about this stuff, because and somebody needs to fix it. He's out there making the world a better place. Thank God for Ashton Kutcher.
God, I love that one. I've heard it so many times, but I still love it.
Sometimes I'm better at telling it than others. I written it down, nailed it down, so sometimes it gets a little weird. Sorry. Yeah, all of my jokes are absolutely awful like that. like why? Like the one I have about what's that?
It reminds me of that girl. She was 8 before she was 7.
Oh!
That took me a split second. I'm like, well, everybody's. Well, wait, no. I was like, no, wait, my math is off. What does he do that? There was this whole process of figuring that out. That was funny. No, but I used to wonder about why. They always say that the majority of rapes go unreported. and put it together. I figured it out. Like, the majority of women have fantasies of varying degrees, but Allison will attest to this. So I think it stands to reason that the reason that the majority of rapes go unreported is because they're not crimes per se. Like, some women, I think it's reason that some women are like, God, I really want a guy with a song. I think some women are out there, girl raped, and her friends will like, are you going to report it? Report it. The only crime was that he finished too soon. God, enough.
Oh yeah. I have a guy that I dated who would break into my house.
That's why they go unreported. What's that?
I had that sex fantasy.
Jesus.
So this guy used to like break into my house and
I was laughing.
rape me.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Joel.
You.
You're kind of interrupting Allison.
Yeah.
I'm interrupting Allison. I'm muted, Allison.
No, she's talking. Can you not hear her?
Holy
I
shit,
can't
dude.
hear her at all. Oh, maybe I'm muted on my end.
Oh, shit.
Oops.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'm sorry, Allison, can you repeat what you were saying? Because this fucking Pakistani terrorist rudely interrupted with his conversation bombs.
I was wondering why there was so much dead air all of a sudden. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
It was just because your dick was crooked.
He deserves that.
I love how
So what
for
were you
once,
saying,
like,
Allison?
as many non sequiturs as Allison makes on a regular basis, like, that one was actually warranted. Like, sure, Joel's dick really has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but we should bring it up anyway, you know?
We're talking about air and dead air.
Let's be honest, that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, that's a big stretch.
Isn't it a bit of a stretch, though? It's crooked.
It'd be more of a stretch than if we tried to stretch his dick straight.
Like that.
Anyways,
but I think
after all these interruptions, Allison, what were you talking about before many people interrupted you?
Okay, so I used to date this guy who would like just randomly break into my house. Well, it's not like I ever locked my doors anyways, but he would like randomly break into my house and then but he knew that I had these fantasies because I like rough sex. So he would come in the middle of the night when I was sleeping, you know, basically rape me.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. When he was done raping you, did he like take off would cuddle, or did he leave right away?
Oh, JT, come on. He was black. He didn't need a mask. I mean, what's wrong with you?
First of all, that was hilariously racist.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't answer the question. Did he stay in cuddle? He was black, so probably not, right? Like, he's not.
Actually, all the guys I've ever been cuddlers. That's why I've been labeled the ice queen because I am not a cuddler and I'm not like affectionate. Like, I'll be affectionate to little kids and animals, but as adults, fuck off. Like, no.
Yeah, you don't have problems at all.
If I'm on top, if I'm on top and a guy starts
emotionally as stable as fuck.
No, I am emotionless. It's different.
Very stable genius.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
But I used to put a pillow if I was on top. Even my husband, if he'd try to like talk to me, I'd put a pillow over his face when I was on top because it was like, shut up, you're breaking my sleep.
Has anybody ever seen Boondocks?
Yep.
Okay, she is the female straight equivalent of Defoe's character in that movie. What are you doing? Why are you cutting? What a fag! Like, that's her. Totally fucking her.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I dated this guy briefly, and then after what happened, I lost respect for him, so then I couldn't fuck him anymore. So the relationship downhill from there on out.
So wait. That's such a weird thing. You're if you lose respect for somebody, you can't fuck them anymore?
Oh yeah. I agree with that.
That's usually the
what it
opposite
was. It's what happened.
Yeah, it's definitely the opposite for you.
Yeah, I know. You look for someone you have no respect for.
Did you hear the fucking the poison dripping from his mouth when he said that? He came out with that so fast.
That was not intentional.
It's like a viper strike. Well, definitely with you.
Hey, you say I was quick.
So
you were midway through that joke when I jumped on it. Okay, let's be real about that.
You were quick to the draw with that shit.
Yeah, I mean it's an easy joke to make. Let's be real. Auger has no standards. We can joke about that.
We can joke about that. I joke about it. Why can't you?
Actually, no standards are high standards compared to what his is.
So let me tell you.
This guy and a thing up his ass, and he was like, "Oh, okay."
All right. So now we're just gonna make up stories. Okay. Here, let
No,
me ask you.
it is not. I'm serious. I talked to a guy that I was dating, and
We're listening.
What happened?
Hello? Allison, where'd you go?
got kicked.
Oh.
She inherited your old phone.
Oh shit!
No, I did not.
Oh, there
okay.
you are.
No, there you are.
I dropped the phone. So
okay.
This guy. So what happened was I used to like how I fuck with JT. I'm like, oh, let me fuck you in the ass. But I can tell you, I can reassure you that if I was to, but I would never fuck him afterwards because he'd be a fag. I'd be like, no, I'm done with that.
Can you imagine being a guy and feeling that way? Wouldn't that be a weird gay proclivity? Like, I'm gay, but I don't like gay men.
It wasn't a big
so I fuck them once because after that it's like you're a fag and I can't respect you enough to fuck you again. If there should be like a short story or like a series about like an asshole gay guy fucks and dumps other gay guys. And because he doesn't respect them, like, you fuck guys,
Listen,
you're gross.
But I know he was a little
disgusting.
But I talked him into it because he wasn't going to let me stick a big thing up his ass. So I did talk him into I was like, well, let me stick a little bullet in your ass. I'm like, that's going to be wonderful. It's going to vibrate your prostate. You'll have no
corn. Sorry, I didn't.
And sure as shit. Finally, after like a few months, all right. And after that, I was like, oh yeah, he's gay. He's like just gay.
So let me ask you this: if your guy had come in and done the whole like snuck into your house and raped you thing, and just
it was a different man. Just to be sure, that was a different guy.
Whatever. That's not the point. My point is, if the guy, if he had night and didn't stick around to cuddle, would you feel that was somehow like, would that alarm you? Would you be bothered by that? Would you be happy about it?
You have no idea, honey.
Well, I'm asking a question. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. So one of the first guys I actually was talking to, and he was just like a fuck friend. He was actually a pimp. And he used to be like, oh my God, you could work for me. Because I was the rudest person to him. I'd be like, hey, on your way out, can you shut the light? Thanks. After sex. And he would just look at me like, what a fucking cunt. Because he could not understand that I didn't want nothing other than a dick. And then it wasn't even good enough. So get the fuck out. He could not come.
My question to you is, which you've neglected to answer so far. If the guy that you did your little rape fan did not stick around to cuddle afterwards, would you say anything? Would you be bothered by that? Would you be okay with that?
I would be happy. Like, deuces.
So, based on that, how would you know? Like, what if it wasn't him? Like, would that bother you?
Because I can feel someone's touch, just like I can remember someone's voice. I may not
Okay, so
remember
you
your
would know
name,
based
but
on
if I
their
hear your
right.
voice,
All right, that's fair.
exactly. But it was always in a black room, a completely dark room, because my room was completely blacked out because I usually work nights, so I slept in the day. But sometimes when I did have the day off, or well, the night off, I guess, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd have somebody like ripping my me over, but I knew who it was. Still put up a fight because, well, the more you fight, the better the sex is.
All right. What if you got a hint? What if there was something about him or something about the way he was doing things that made you go, I'm not sure, is this my guy? Maybe this isn't him. Would it freak you out?
No, because sex is like a sport. Honestly, there's a and I was
abused. Whatever.
Yeah. No, listen, I was abused, but I was raped.
That's what I was trying to get at.
My first sexual experience with my husband was literally like, okay, like it wasn't anything romantic. Like my first husband used to say, "You want to hold on? I can mock his voice. You want to push?" That's what he said. He'd be like, "You want to push?" Push was for sex.
You want to push?
Yeah, because it's a mongrel. It was like a mongrel. Like there was like nothing.
Who was that laughing in the background?
That's my husband now. And he knows that my first husband, he knows that
listening to all of this.
Yeah, but I'm on good terms with like my ex. He knows he actually done my ex is a tile person. He actually did tile for my husband's dad, my father-in-law. Like Portuguese.
What'd he say?
Oh, because he also did the mall from, he says Bad Santa, I guess. Was Bad Santa in Arizona? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My ex actually did tile on the mall of Bad.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was in Arizona.
Wow. This is
You got to be cordial with people, and I truly believe like fuck friends are fuck friends. But I've dated a lot of people, like not a lot, but I dated guys that I just were like, you know what, you're better as a friend than you are as a lover, and just been strictly friends and nothing else, and been.
Well, truth is truth. Here's my point. The fact that if you were flipped over one night and you were given the idea that, hey, wait, this is different somehow. This might not be. And the fact that you were like, yeah, whatever, game on. Like
depends on how good the dick is. Now, if it was a really good dick, I wouldn't complain.
It really makes me wonder just how many women are out there that feel the same way.
Well, I'm on a different level than most people because I'm pretty fucked up.
I don't know necessarily that that's true. I know that that's. I mean, I don't know. I think women have dark fantasies and they're just a little too afraid to really try them out. But if they were sort of pushed into it, I think that they would tend to go along with.
Well, I mean, I talked about that study the other week, like how like Democrats like power relations in their sex, and Republicans like polygamy and stuff like polyamory and stuff like that. Like basically like we want what is taboo, and so I mean I can see people having those kind of fantasies, and like
that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about the causality. Adita brought up the whole thing about too much money makes you sick, and I started asking about the quality of pedophilia. Her position was that the money turns you that way, and I was saying, well, what if you're that way and you go for positions of power and influence so that you can actually access your
But what
urges
about
and
the
desires.
broke ass pedos? Like, that's not true. I mean, money just, if you're narcissistic.
Well, here's what I'm talking about. Adam talking about we want what's taboo. So this might lend itself a little to what Adita was saying, because if you have enough money that nothing's taboo, then you keep trying to push the envelope.
Yeah, I can see
if
that.
If you have enough money, right? So all of a sudden, let's say you come from nothing. All of a sudden, you have money, and you're like, now I can have women that are so beautiful that they cost me $10,000 in a night. I can have 3 of them at once. I can pay for I can country and have, and pay and honey, I can, you just keep trying to do things to push the envelope.
Yeah, but
I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that scenario. What's that?
Being a narcissist has nothing to do with finance. Granted, a lot of people that do have,
we're not talking about narcissism. Why are you bringing it?
Only sickos think that only sickos will think that, oh, I only have one wife. I want 4. And then goes out and does it. Like, those are like people that are narcissistic, psychotic people. Like, I don't see how you would not know that. Like Anthony Epstein. Like, Epstein.
We're not talking about wives. Like, that's too much. We're just talking about paying to fuck people.
That's what I'm talking about. Listen, a person who wants something new is not happy in their own life. It does not matter if they are rich or poor. If a person is always looking for something more, they're not happy within their own life.
That's the majority.
Well, I mean, that's also human nature, though, to look for something more. Like, I mean, relative to any time in history and relative to anyone else in the world right now, we are very, very prosperous. We are the most prosperous society ever. And we still have people who are, not satisfied with their current lot, because that's how human psychology works. We balance out to kind of a neutral state of happiness.
So if you went to the casino, right? If you're in Vegas and I give you $1,000, are you going to blow all the $1,000, or are you going to blow more than that? Like, if you won, like, you blew $1,000, right? And you won $1 million, are you going to stop, or are you like, oh, I want $2 million? Because in the back of your head, you're rational, and you're going to be like, fuck that, I'm good right here. You know when to stop, and those people don't know when to stop.
But that's the majority of people, isn't it? That won't. I mean, those
are narcissists who believe that they can do more, that they can achieve more, that they are entitled more.
Well, I don't necessarily. I don't know that that's narcissism. I don't know that you're.
Are you specifically talking about like the pedophilia thing, or just?
Well, now we're talking about Vegas.
In general, no. I was using that as an example. No, in general. Like, if you have someone who's not content in their own life, they're going to be like, I'm depressed. Or if they're narcissistic, they're going to be like, no, I deserve more. Even though that they don't, then what happens is that they start taking more, or they try to gamble everything. Like, it's like a mental issue.
I mean, it can be a mental issue depending on how they act that out and how strong those feelings are. To a certain degree, like I said, it's very normal to be kind of neutral towards your current situation, no matter how good or bad it is. So it really depends. But I mean, I think as far as like, why, speaking to your theory of like, money corrupting and all that, I think the reason like that kind of happens is when you're that rich and that powerful. That tends to translate into like it tends to operate through like kind of a power axis of at least like in Hollywood with the casting couch, where it's like, I'm this powerful director, and if I want a girl to sleep with me in order to get the lead part, well, I'm well within my rights to make her do that to me. And so it's like you feel entitled to that power.
Right,
even
but those bitches that are crying about getting raped, that's bullshit, because they willingly gave it up. Because you know why? they wanted a career.
Well, let's talk about that actually, because that's an interesting one.
Career.
Is where do you because yeah, I mean, there's a strong case to be made that like that kind of thing, like the casting couch, is consensual. You know, and then there's other people saying that like, okay, well, the power relationship is so skewed in one direction that it's not truly consensual. So like, where do you all fall on that?
Hang on a second. We got somebody who's saying they're having trouble being able to contribute to the conversation. So I want to make sure that they're able to this time. Sativa, can you hear us?
Yeah.
There you are.
Hey, all right. Real quick, if there's anybody who's trying to contribute and can't, please let us know in chat. Or incapable. Nicole, I understand that you were having trouble or being interrupted. Was that just interrupting you, or were you being...
No, because I was a freaking idiot. At the very beginning, I was server, didn't realize it.
Oh.
And so I was talking. I was like, God damn it, why does everyone keep talking over me and ignoring me? I was getting really mad.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. She was outside, and I could hear her yelling, and I'm like, "What is she yelling? Who is she talking to?"
So real quick, I just want to make it clear: if anybody wants to contribute to the conversation and wants to be unmuted, let us know. If you are having any trouble contributing after you've already been unmuted, please let us know in chat. We'll do everything we can to try and fix the problem so that we can have you join us in the conversation. Sativa, I understand you got some things. I'm gonna stop the conversation for a second, and kind of take a break from what we were talking about. And I'd like to offer this time to Sativa. She listening in earlier to some of the stuff that we were talking about and had some things that she would like to contribute, as I understand it. So Sativa, is there something you'd like to say?
Yeah, okay, so fair warning. If any of this was already touched on, it's because I kept getting kicked. I have only heard about half of the podcast. Where I was initially trying to jump in, had messaged you, was when you were discussing disciplinary things for children regarding, are we for spanking, against, whatever the case may be. I thought it was kind of funny that as the only ad mod that, to my knowledge, has small people, I was not able to chime in.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, I rarely, if ever, actually any kind of physical anything upon my children. And you can literally ask any children are well behaved enough. It's a little alarming. It is about talking to your children, and I think what a lot of parents do show their children how to respect people. Because here's the thing, too many parents, I think, are caught up in, you will be afraid of me, and that will make you... Whereas I think that if parents focus, hey, this is how you respect other human beings, they will just naturally start to respect other human beings and not act like little fuckwipes. The reason that my children are well behaved is not only because I talk to them like human beings, I don't baby talk my kids, I don't tiptoe around shit with them, but I also don't treat them like second-class citizens. They are human beings, children. They understand what is expected of them, and as such, they adhere to that behavior. Additionally, and that I will tell them, but they understand. I will tell them once to understand that I will actually beat their ass if I need. And with that said, the last time that I actually had to swat one of my children. And, my kids aren't the ones in the middle of Walmart throwing fucking temper tantrums and shit like that, because they just know that it is fucking unacceptable. And I think that too many parents are caught up with, no, spanking is abuse, so take away all discipline, or they get so caught up in, fuck it, I'll beat my kid's ass, that this is a child who is not learning discipline. This is a child who is learning, I can't get caught doing anything like this because I will get my ass.
Right.
The secret, in my opinion, is not to teach them and don't get caught, or that you can do whatever the fuck you want. You have to find that middle road, what is and is not acceptable behavior out of them in any given situation.
Do you, when you talk to your children, do you speak to them as if they are almost like an adult? Like, as a peer more than a little.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I've always found that seems to be much more effective.
Well, because here's the thing: if you want, all right. The problem is that we've got parents out there who are on both sides of the road here. We've got parents who, on one hand, are expecting, their 6, 7, 8-year-old kids to be as independent as a teenager, but they're still talking to them like they are 3 years old. Versus these parents who are like the helicopter type, who don't give any kind of freedom, don't give any kind of autonomy. Yeah. And here's the thing: once you establish your guidelines, you can give that freedom and that autonomy. But if you do not establish the guidelines first, they're going to walk all over you. And then you also have, poor co-parenting where you maybe dad's the disciplinarian and mom's the pushover, which everybody's going to have that dynamic to some degree. But at the point that, there's nothing in life that pisses me off faster than hearing a mother say, if you don't knock it off, I'm going to.
Right?
That is a huge fucking mistake. And that kid's going to act up for mom for the rest of his fucking life because fuck you, mom. You can't handle shit on your own.
What did they say? If you don't listen to your mom, what?
Where you've got a kid acting up for mom and her initial, her immediate response is, well, if you don't knock that shit off, I'm going to call your father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The parents definitely have to be together in their discipline.
Right.
And it's not to sound like a fucking feminist. Yeah, and not to sound like a fucking feminist, but this is also why we have, an alarming amount. It's not the only reason, but I think it contributes to the fact that we have an alarming amount of, people now growing up and going out into the world that have zero fucking respect for women. It's because they've spent their whole lives with, well, mom's not going to do anything unless she has to call. And I think that's a very dangerous mindset to put people in.
I can see that.
You see, wait. You say that as though that's the trend that you see. You see a trend of people disrespect women in power?
Not on like the grand scale. Like I'm not talking about like in politics, anything like that. Look at things like, even if you brought it down to the smaller level of like domestic violence, okay? If you look at basically how far cases of domestic violence have escalated over the last few generations compared to where they were, it's super obvious to me that we have stopped raising children who have a basic respect for a mother type figure. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're saying, only because the statistics to corroborate that, because the majority of domestic violence happens on the part of the women.
Mm-hmm. Now, do me a favor, Augie, one of these days, jump on one of your female socks. You will see what I'm talking about. In fact, you already did, because you even were commenting with one of your female socks about how, well, people were literally talking down to you because you were talking about something that they didn't think a chick should know about. And that also feeds into what I'm talking about. It's not just on the physical level. It's just the basic lack of respect for women. There's a lot of things that we can blame for that, but it fucking starts at home. And let me tell you, I'm raising gentlemen in my house. I'm not raising fucking ass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even, it's basically about if as parents, let them walk all over. Admittedly, women are way, way worse about that than men are, because women a lot of times do well, I'm going to call your father. That shouldn't be a fucking threat. You should be able to handle that shit your goddamn self, because not only will your children respect you, once they leave there, they're going to look at anyone who is in any state of authority over them, or even as a peer. Because here's the thing, if they won't even recognize them in any kind of authority, they sure the fuck are not going to respect them.
Yeah, they don't take them seriously.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a fucking feminist, but no.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of parents these days really want to be their kids' friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem. I think like it's one thing to like, try to reason with them, like what Face is saying, and basically kind of like appeal to their, logical side, which they do have even at a young age. But it's another thing to say, like, to try to, forego your role as a parent and instead try to be their friend. I think that can lead to a lot of major problems, and most of which is them like basically a lack of respect for not only authority but just like
I
people
think it's
in general.
Yeah,
I think I think we're dealing with two different extremes here. We're talking about not a mother figure or mother straight up who doesn't discipline her kids. Yeah, you're putting the discipline on or you're putting the onus on the father, and the kids become used to that. Sure, I understand your position with that. I do, but I don't. I think the opposite of that. I think there's two extremes. I think that's one extreme. I had a mother who relished in dishing out the abuse, and then watching as after Dad got home, so that she could sit back and enjoy a bag of popcorn while I got round two. That didn't make me respect women any greater either. I didn't come away from that fear. I mean, I didn't come away from that thinking women are tough and capable. No, I came away thinking women are to be distrusted. They're to be
they'll sell you out.
Doubted.
Yeah,
well, they're to be
it's the way that she
kept at a distance.
Well, and that's also where it comes in, Augie. The whole use without beating them half to death. There's a difference between discipline and abuse. And too many people think it's black and fucking white. There's a lot of little spots in the middle of that. But at the end of, as a woman, and hey, I don't have to. And honestly, I'll tell you, as much as I say I rarely, if ever, have to raise a hand to my children, I, if ever, have to raise my voice at my children. Because
I think that
bargain with them. No, you're good. You can't bargain with them. At a certain point, you have to know these are the rules. This is what is acceptable. This is what is not acceptable. But you don't have to be a cunt. And as long as you are teaching, basically, here's the thing. As a rule, if you start instilling in them the basic respect of this is what I need you to do right now, they will just do it.
Yeah.
And it continues to feed into adult life. And I mean, there's people that came out of abusive situations that are perfectly respectful, and there are people perfectly respectful situations that are super abusive later in life. But I think that there's a distinct correlation. You don't need to be half to death, but you shouldn't be their little best friend all.
No, I think that's something that what Adam and I established earlier, which you may have missed, and I think you're pretty much in agreement with, is that taking the time to spend and put attention to your kids, and then following through with the discipline, not just putting in the effort and spending the time and giving them the attention they need, but also following through with discipline, establishing the boundaries, and then making sure that what you say will happen when those boundaries are crossed actually does happen. And that was something that Adam established, and I agree with.
That's because Adam's smart as fuck.
I think that's pretty much what you're saying too.
Yes, it absolutely is, and that's why I preface this with I missed like half of what was going on because I kept getting kicked.
Yeah.
No, and I just wanted to make sure. I know you had mentioned you would at least expressed some frustration within the inability to contribute to that. So I wanted to make sure that you were able to.
Thank you.
Like the other thing to what Face is saying is like the whole like mom saying, oh well, go ask your father, basically like them being the nurturer and the dad being the disciplinarian. The important thing is for the two of them to be united in because whenever one parent tries to override the other's decisions, then the kid recognizes that. Kids are smarter than we think, and they will
start to handle it,
capitalize on that weakness. Yeah,
right. A child will exploit that every time.
They will exploit that, absolutely. So like that's the important thing is like, and it's difficult just as a human to be like, okay, I strongly disagree with what you're saying, but I'm going to outwardly act like I'm supportive of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And you can audit it and come to a solution privately.
Yeah.
See, and my husband and I are above literally sending the children into the other room, go into a different room, and they're not stupid. They know what we're doing. We're with the kids.
Right.
We do that in front of them. We need to come to our agreement,
privately
from them.
Yeah.
Yes. That way, the kids are not watching us fucking beat each other half to death, or verbally or anything like that over what the fuck they just did. Okay, you know what? And we'll literally, okay, no, we need to. We're gonna dog ear this conversation. You're gonna go in there. We're gonna go in here. We'll be back in a minute. You think about it, and come out with a united front. And there's times that conversation takes maybe longer than I'd like it to, either of us. But at the end of the day, what the kids, we have just worked through whatever fucking issues we had, and then now we're going to come and deal with you as a unit. And that's it. Yeah. That really does prevent the whole, oh, well, I can play mom against dad and blah, 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 blah. No. Right. You cannot let them do that. There is no negotiation with terrorists. Get your fucking house under control, and you don't have to do it with a bullwhip.
We're only talking about violent fetishes if beating your kids is what you consider a violent fetish. So,
which
yes, maybe.
I hope it's not. For the sake of your hypothetical children, but
you're the kind of parent who likes to discipline your kids and beat them, and then later go into the room after you're done and run out. Then yes, that would be.
Yeah, you definitely have a problem at that point.
Yeah,
I mean,
people pay money.
I guess that wouldn't necessarily be gross. It's like, hey, I didn't. It's not like I fucked them.
God.
I feel catchy and undesirable.
I didn't stick them in them or anything. I just beat them a little, and rubbed one out. What? I even did it behind closed doors. It's who's convicted of this crime?
Oh fuck!
There are gradations to evil. That does not mean the lower gradations are not evil. Okay? Let's make that clear. Just so we're clear on that.
Oh, God. So fun. All right, so...
I think we're about wrapped up, or we should.
Are we wrapped up?
I mean, it's
2.5
hours in. It's pretty much when we call it.
Minutes.
God, that got dead quiet.
Yeah, I'm sensing a resounding yes.
All right.
All in favor.
All right, I was having fun. All right, well, then
we're
I guess we're calling.
Fun.
Well, what?
I said we're all having fun. That's not the issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
true.
When it's
some of us have jobs.
All right, thanks for coming tonight. Really appreciate you coming and joining us for another episode of House of Auger.
You sound
Y'all have yourselves a good night. You're all right, girl.
You sound like you could be from Smithville.
I opened the show that way because it's that fucking Red Dead Redemption game. That main character. I fucking love him
like
so much.
all the men around
it needs
here.
to hurry up and get on PC.
So you're missing out so much.
I'm tired of not getting these references.
I'm trying to shoot you in the face and you're waving at me. Oh man. All right, so you guys have a good night. We're mods, if you would join me in the mod chat. Everybody else, thank you so much for those who tuned in for the first time. I think there was a couple of you. Really appreciate it. Hope you come next Tuesday, same time. Actually, wait. We're going to need to change the day, I think, come soon here.
Why?
Because Tuesday is Christmas. Christmas comes on Tuesday.
That it does.
Change that one day.
Yeah.
I can't do Monday, but I could. But
I don't know.
Wednesday be
might
okay
have
for
to
everybody,
cancel.
or would preferable?
But
Monday is Christmas. I don't think people are going to want.
That's
Probably
Monday,
after.
or take.
I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll
All
talk
right.
about
Yeah, we'll
it.
figure it out. All right.
Get back to
But
you,
I mean,
the
that's
audience.
a way anyway. Thank you again, everybody, and tune in next time, and we'll see you then. Good night, and go home.